As usual, we are gathered here today to listen to another dispensation of the Lord Buddha's teaching. And before we commence, let us all take a moment to remind ourselves that the reason we are today in receipt of the greatest teaching that leads us to our salvation, to our liberation, to our deliverance, is because of the Supreme One, the perfectly enlightened One, the infinitely compassionate One, and He who dedicated Himself in an infinitely long journey in samsara towards the deliverance of all sentient beings, which includes you and I. And therefore, before we commence, let us all take a moment to pay homage to the Gautama Supreme Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Okay, that's much better. I mean what I said in several contexts. It wasn't just literally see where I can, or sit where I can see you, be where I can see you. Even in the metaphorical sense. We all need a teacher to walk this path. I need a teacher. I'll be the first to admit that. There's only one being who didn't need a teacher. But the shame of it is, he couldn't find one. So he had to go and discover this all by himself. He looked, but he couldn't find one. Having failed to find a teacher, he decided that I'm going to have to do this by myself. Not out of choice, just didn't have any other choice. He had to go and do this by himself. But everyone since this unique personality, who are we talking about? The Supreme Buddha. Everyone since him in this dispensation needed a teacher. Right from Kondanya, who was the first to transform from a Pruthakjana to a Sotapanna, all the way until the last person who will attain noble attainments, who will achieve noble attainments in this dispensation. Each and every one of them will need a teacher. And I hope you realize that yourselves. If ever there comes a point where you decide, or you think to yourself, I don't need a teacher, you have already lost. I will vouch for that. You have already lost. We all need a teacher. And it is a blessing to actually have a teacher. Sometimes I go up to Guru Hamdru and tell him, he being the most senior monk at the monastery, I tell him, I'm much luckier than you are. So I've told this to his face. I'm much luckier than you are. And he said, how so? I said, well, I have everything that you have and one more. I have the Dhamma just like you. Because whatever comes to your mind, you tell us, you teach us. So I have everything that comes to your mind. I have all the books to access, all the resources, they're all available to me. And all the other monks at this monastery, and the wisdom that they have is all accessible to me just as much as it is to you. But I have something that you don't have. And that is, I have a teacher. I said, hoo-hoo. So I consider myself to be luckier than he is. I think I've actually earned a lot more merit in my journey in samsara than Guru Hamdru has. To be blessed with a teacher. Of course, he does speak to us from time to time, and he consults with us when something comes to his mind. So we discuss things among ourselves. And that's not to say that he didn't have a teacher, he did. Well, his teacher passed away some time ago. But ever since, the Dhamma has been his teacher. But it's great to have actually a person, a character, a strong character to be around, to guide on, or to be guided by, to lean on, to run for advice. It's a blessing. So whenever you have a teacher, try and be a person who is constantly in their line of sight. I don't mean literally, and I don't mean physically, metaphorically. Stand where your teacher can always see you. Be open with them. Don't hide your weaknesses. Every day you should wish, may my teacher see as many weaknesses as I may have. That is how you should start your day. May my teacher be able to see as many weaknesses as I may have. May he or she be able to see all of my weaknesses, such that he may guide me, such that he may correct me, such that he or she may show me the path. Because if ever the thought comes to your mind that I can now do this by myself, if ever the thought comes to your mind that I no longer need the teacher, I'm independent, you've already failed. So this is why I said, sit where I can see you, so I can catch you out when you're being mischievous. How are you going to be mischievous today? Let me hear you. Oh, right, okay. You've already planned that out. I was thinking of something else, but you've already come prepared to disappoint me. So that's the plan, is it? Sleep. I hope not. Don't succumb to that evil. It's a silent killer, sleep, just as much as time is. And the reason sleep is so detrimental to your progress is because time flies by. And you can't put yourself to any use. When's a car of use? When it's parked in the garage, locked up? No, when you actually drive in the thing, right? Anything's the same. So you're of use to yourself, not to me. You're of use to yourself when you can put your mind to use. You can't put your mind to use when it's asleep. So I'm sorry to keep reminding me this every time, but I think it's only right that I do, just in case you've forgotten. It'll come. I can guarantee that it's going to come in a few moments. Right? In 15 minutes, half an hour's time, I'll start to see a few heads nodding, even without me asking any questions. But don't succumb to it. Keep a bottle of water close by, wash your face. If you start to feel sleepy, drowsy, get up, start walking up and down. Oh, go outside, there's the washrooms onto my right hand side. Go and wash yourselves, freshen yourselves up, come back in. Just don't give up. We can't afford to give up. We can't afford to give up. How long do you think the Buddha's dispensation is going to last? How long is it going to last? 2000? You sure? How long did it last for your grandmother? 2,500 years? What good is it lasting for another 2,500 years if you're going to be dead by the end of this year? Don't let anyone fool you to think that this is going to be around for another 2,500 years. It will be. Not for me, for everybody else. I wake up every morning thinking today's my last day alive. So I know then that the Buddha's dispensation only lasts, well, it's 2:45 now. I've got about 8 hours left. About 9 hours left. At the end of that 9 hours, I'll be gone. And along with me, any hope, any chance I had of redeeming myself, because that will be the end of the Sambuddha Shasana. Not 2,500 years. Today is the last day. I want you to start feeling this, not just words, because that amounts to nothing. We can all say this, right? Time is so precious, time is ticking by. Hell, people write songs about this stuff. But I want you to start feeling this. I want you to internalize this feeling, this uncertainty that revolves around all of you. Because it's with that uncertainty, your drive and your ambition picks up a notch. You need to gear up. And to gear up, you need to remind yourself that you have very little time left. Just think for a moment, right? If you're by your father's deathbed, okay? And he's holding on to your hand and he's saying, "Do it, Buddha. I've only got another 2 hours." That's what the doctor. So the doctors come in, he's got his report in his hand, he says, "We've just come to inform you that your father's going to pass away in the next 2 hours. These are the last 2 hours you have with him." You're holding on to his hand so dearly. This is your beloved father. Put your hand up if you're going to fall asleep in the next 2 hours. He starts talking to you. His voice is frail. You can just about make out what he's saying. He's so weak. He can't even utter the words. What he wants to say, he's finding it very difficult to get out because he's so weak, so old. Last 2 hours left. Even when what he's saying is not clear, would you not strive to try and understand what it is he's saying? Because these are the last words that he's going to utter. This is the last time you're going to hear him speak. These are the last 2 hours you can spend with him alive. After that, you see, it doesn't matter how long you're going to be around, because your dad's not going to be around in 2 hours' time. But losing our fathers, we've done so many times now. I'm talking about something that is more precious than your parents. I'm talking about the Buddha's ministry. I'm talking about the Buddha's teaching. It's not right really for me to tell you that you're going to be around till the end of the day. Who's given me the right to say that to you? How can I say that to you? I know I'm actually fooling you when I tell you, think that you're going to be around till the end of the day. What guarantee do I have? How do you know this is not the last 2 hours that you have? How do you know you're going to be leaving this room alive? So we need to pick up the courage. We can't rest on our laurels. We've got to be diligent. Because when time's up, I'm not going to be saying anything after that. Because then it's going to be too late for all of us. Right? So, just like you're by your father's deathbed, holding on to his hand so dearly, hoping that may he live a moment longer, 5 minutes longer. That's what you'll keep asking the doctor, right? Doctor, can you get him to live maybe just 5 more minutes? What can we do? Can you put him on some drugs so he can last another 5 minutes? Doesn't matter how much it costs, I'll pay. Just give me 5 more minutes with him. But no, you've only got 2 hours. Will you not want the clock to stop? I'm talking about something that is much more dear to you, that must be much more dear to you than that. I'm talking to you about the Buddha's teaching. The only hope, the only chance we all have to redeem ourselves. So, Much like you're not going to be falling asleep by your father's deathbed, I can't imagine you'll be falling asleep through the next few hours. Is that a fair assumption to make? Hopefully. Prove that I'm wrong. No, prove that I'm right. Okay. So I shan't say any more about that. Hopefully, you're inspired enough to make that decision and do something about it when sleep starts knocking on your door. I keep trying to inspire you every day. Because if you don't act through inspiration, folks, you're going to have to start to act through desperation. One of these two things will get you to start acting. Hopefully it's inspiration. Failing that, it's going to be desperation. Which one do you choose? Don't give up. So I'm informed that this is the 100th session. Which is quite a remarkable achievement. A lot of people have contributed to getting us there. And I'm only just the face of this whole project. A face that not many people have seen, and with some luck, long may that continue to be the case. A week or two before, at the end of one of these sessions, someone came up to me and they said, Swaminathan, we are so grateful that you do these sermons. We are so grateful to have received this teaching. How is it that we can pay our veneration to you? So they're holding their hands like this with the mark of veneration, and they're standing talking to me towards my left-hand side. And I said, sir, all you have to do is just turn 30 degrees to your right-hand side and just say what you just said. So they're on my left-hand side. I said, turn 30 degrees to your right-hand side. Why is that? Because that's where he who deserves praise, he who deserves the honor, rests. And we're talking about the Supreme Buddha for those of you who are listening to us online. That's where the Buddha statue is in this hall. I've only just been the face of this. There are a large number of people who have made this success. Right from spreading the word. And a lot of you may be here today because you heard of this from someone else. I think this is why this event should be cherished and celebrated. Not because we've reached 100, but I think this should be a moment where we think back to who it is that helped us get here and be grateful to what they have done for us. All those people who encouraged you to be here, maybe perhaps dragged you in here. Come on, let's just try 1 week. Come on, let's just go 1 week and see how it is. Let's see how it goes. You don't have to keep coming. Just 1 week, just try it once. Hey, listen to this CD. Just see what you think. Just listen to it once. See what you think. Now I'll try later. No, okay. And they keep reminding you, keep pestering you. And then eventually you gave in because they were beginning to become a pain in the backside. Ultimately you listened to the CD and you thought, wow, that changed my life. I think this is what this moment is about. Think back about all those people who helped you. If today you have achieved something, and I'm not necessarily talking about Margapada, I'm talking about peace of mind. If today you have achieved some peace of mind, if today you are able to withstand the storms of desire, aversion and delusion and fight back, when people come and blame you in the face, sometimes accuse you for things you haven't done, When the fires of desire arise in your heart, today the way you respond to these events is very different. I think that is what has to be celebrated. All the people who have been arranging these sessions, providing you with the transport to get here, organizing that, right up to when we started doing these sermons at Alanmatini Aram, and the monks who are resident there and who organized the facilities or arranged the facilities so that we could use them. A lot of you, that's where you started this journey. And those of you who've been helping transcribe these sermons, to get the teaching of the Buddha out to the masses. There's 8 billion people out there. As I was speaking to a group of people yesterday, I was telling them something, I'll share that with you now. As much as I struggle sometimes preaching this Dhamma in English, I prefer to preach in English than in Sinhala. And there's a reason for that. It's because repaying debt towards the Sambuddha Shasana and cultivating the path to achieve my salvation have to happen hand in hand. The day that I become an Arahant is the day that I will have repaid all debts that I owe to the Buddha's ministry. Me attaining an Arahanthood cannot happen while I'm still indebted to the Buddha's ministry. So whenever I preach a sermon, I'm repaying some of the debt that I owe it. And that could, the debt that I have acquired could have come in many ways. Sometimes taking what belongs to the Buddha's ministry when it's not duly mine. A lot of people don't realize these things, right? But it's important that we talk about some of these things, at least from time to time. I remember when I was younger, whenever we used to go to the temple, it was as if it was a given. I used to walk up to the kitchen, make myself a cup of tea, right? Like it was given for granted. I took it for granted that I could just walk into the kitchen and make myself a cup of tea. It sounds so simple, right? And so, what's the word? So harmless. But I didn't realize that what I'm taking is what belongs to the Mahasangha. Something that was not given to me to take, I was taking from it. It's one thing to take it once it's given, but not when it's not given to me. So I was getting in debt, and I didn't realize this. It didn't matter that I had taken alms to the monks at the temple. That didn't matter. I was taking something that was not given to me and something that belonged to the Sangha. There may have been plenty of times in this samsara where I will have offended the noble ones, where I will have been unkind through body, speech and mind to the noble ones, where I will have slandered them, offended them and desecrated them, where I may have even myself, perhaps there may have been occasions when you wanted to go and take teaching from the Buddha. Or maybe you and I, we had met in a previous time in samsara. You wanted to go to the temple and I said to you, a waste of time. Let's go to the party. Today, this is the weekend. What are you doing going to the temple? Come on, let's go to the party. I ruined your life. Whatever chance you had of delivering yourself, redeeming yourself, I took that opportunity away from you. And so what am I doing today now? I'm repaying my debts. I'm repaying my debts to you. Chances are, it was I who kept you from attaining Nirvana on many occasions before. And today I'm trying to do the opposite of that because I'm repaying my debts to you. Many times I might have prevented the Buddha or members of the Sangha from receiving alms. The Mara is famous for this. Plenty of times the Buddha's gone round on alms and the Mara goes and possesses the people in the village And because of possession, the people don't realize that the Buddha has come into their village and we need to offer alms. And at the end of the alms round, the Buddha goes back to the temple. And Mara comes and mocks at him. That didn't go so well, did it, huh? He mocks at the Buddha. And he says, maybe you should go and try again. This time I'll let them give you food. So he's done things like that. Well, if the Mara could do things like that, well, I'm sure. Me having been a subject of Mara, when Mara was king of my world, today the Tathagata is my king. When I was a subject of the Mara, well, there may have been plenty of times where I will have prevented the Buddha, members of the Sangha, from receiving alms. So these are all debts that I owe the Buddha's dispensation, and debts that I have to repay. So my point being, the reason I prefer to preach in English versus preaching in Sinhala is because whenever I preach a sermon, if there are people in the audience who receive the teaching, and it makes a difference in their lives, it transforms their lives, it helps them become better people, it helps them to become noble people, then I'm repaying debt. There are only 20 million people in this country, and of them, an even smaller population that actually speaks Sinhala, a good Sinhala, or at least fluent in Sinhala, and can understand when something is explained in Sinhala. But the number of people who speak English, considering the global population, is a vast majority. So compared to those people who speak in Sinhala, there's many, many more people who actually speak English throughout the world. So when I preach a sermon in English, when whoever, doesn't matter, I'm talking generally, when you preach a sermon in English, many more people are able to receive that teaching and transform their lives. And in doing so, I get to repay my debts quicker. Because the number of lives it can touch is many times more. So now think about, there'll be people among you, who help in transcribing the sermons, so we can get them out to the people in written form. There'll be those among you who help produce the CDs that we get out to people, help in editing the audios, getting the message across, posting on the groups, right? Whatever contribution you will have made to get the teaching of the Buddha out to the masses, this is what today is about. It's about celebrating that. It's not the fact that we have reached 100. That's not what matters. In fact, I'll be the first to remind you, let's not get carried away about the fact that we have reached 100. Because remember, we've had to do 100. And you're still here. That's not something to throw a party about. If you've been going to the doctor for the last 6 months, when it comes to your anniversary, right? 1 year anniversary, but do you go and celebrate that? Doctor, I was diagnosed with cancer. This is my 100th, or this is my first year anniversary of coming to you. Let's throw a party. Is that something to celebrate? No. So I'll be the first to remind you, let's not get carried away. The success of these sermons should be the fewer that we have to do. That's what the success factor is. The fewer the sermons I have to give you, such that you are able to become a Sotapanna, Sakrodagami, Anagami, and eventually, finally, an Arahant. The fewer sermons that you need to listen to, that is what determines how successful we are. Because the more sermons you have to listen to, well, we're still giving you medicine. You come here for your ailments. This is a hospital more so than a monastery. I consider this a hospital, the Jetavanarama Hospital. Jetavanarama Forest Hospital. Because we're all patients here. I'm an inward patient, and you come to the outpatients department. Don't you? Yes. This is the dress they put on when they take us into the operation theatres. This is the kit. that gets put on the inward patients. Actually, the inward patients get a band that goes around, a lanyard that goes around their necks. It's yellow in color. There's 2 of them back of the room. And then when the time comes and it's time to take into the operation theatre, that's when you get this on. Whereas those who come in colored dress, they come into the outpatients department, they take a prescription and they go away. While they're in the hospital, we can keep an eye on them, check their pulse, get the temperature, right? Do a blood test, and then give the prescription. But the doctor can have no guarantee that when the patient leaves the hospital, they're going to be taking the drugs, and that they'll not be doing any of the things that the doctor advises against them doing. What guarantee does your doctor have that if you got diabetes, that you don't eat all the cake you like when you get back home? What guarantee does the doctor have? The only thing he can do is when you go back to the hospital for your next clinic session, he can check your blood and see how much sugar is in your blood, and through which he'll come to a determination that you have not been doing what I've been telling you, right? And so he tells you off, and then what he has to do is turn up the dosage. But if you're in the hospital, in the wards, now the doctor can constantly keep an eye on you. Now he can actually control your food. He can stop you from taking all the bad stuff. But when you're outside the hospital walls, then you need to have a lot more discipline. My question is, do you have it? Do you have that discipline? Because everyone else you're living with are also patients. They're infecting each other. This is like a plague. Like zombies. When one's infected, then everyone else in the village is infected. Everyone else in the neighborhood is infected. So this is the camp where we don't let zombies come in, at least not above this wall. We don't let zombies above these steps. What does that make you? You said so. Because I can't keep a close eye on you. I can only help you while you're here. Right? So, particularly gents, young men, right? Those who are here as well as listen to these sermons online, try and take that next step. If you've been listening to 100 sermons now, how many more sermons do you need to listen to, for heaven's sake? Before you decide to do something with your life, something positive with your life. And the ladies in the house, those who have still got the vitality of life with you, those who are still young, those who can still do something with your lives, right? When are you going to make that change in your life? How much longer do you want to be out there? Out with all the other zombies who are always at each other's necks. Did I mention to you about the Anagarika program? I think it was mentioned in the English sermon. So I'll mention it briefly. For those women between the ages of I think it's 18 and 44. Or was it 40? 40, I think. 40. We are going to be launching an Anagarika program. The plan is that they're able to come into the Shasana, but not as nuns in your lay figure, but you're able to then dedicate the entirety of your life towards practicing the path with constant instruction, regular instruction, always having an eye kept on you to help you progress, to help you practice the path to Nibbana. So if there are those among you who want to take that step, and you are free of the duties and responsibilities, there may be those who are of that age but have duties, responsibilities, like being a mother. If your children are still not of the age where they can look after themselves, or if there's not another partner in the family who can take that responsibility off your shoulders, then of course you need to sort out those issues, because, there's very little we can do about such things. But if there are those among you who are prepared, who are ready, and who want to dedicate themselves to practicing the path, then we have begun to open the doors to females as well. The only reason that we've had to put an age limit there is because when we take guardianship of whoever, male or female, right, then we are responsible 100% for their well-being. All the requisites, food is generally not a problem, shelter is not a problem, clothing is not a problem, but when it comes to health, then usually from that age onwards, it's downhill, which is a sad fact. And that's not just for females. Males, pretty much the same, but usually they can last till about 50, and then from 50, 55 onwards, for males, it's downhill. And then what will happen is, if we take people who need constant medical attention in as well, then the small team that we have to look after all these things, including our monks, will have nothing better to do than to go and babysit those who are needing constant medical attention. And of course also the expenses that come with that, right? Because what we are not about is an old people's home. That's not what we are about. This is purely about creating an environment where people can come and dedicate their lives to practicing the path. So that's the plan for now. Don't know how it will be in the future. Things may change. But for now, there's people, if there are those among you who, having listened to 100 sermons, are deciding perhaps I need to make that transformation in my life, then I say, pick up the courage, take that next step. I did that 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago now, and there wasn't a single moment I have regretted. Every moment that's passed by, I have only been so happy that I took the right decision in my life. I'm only regretful that I waited for so long to do this. But those who can't join us, don't despair, because we're always here to help. Try and come along as often as you can. Come to the monastery, because as you know, we can't leave the monastery and come and help you. Our wings have been clipped, which is another blessing from our perspective. But make it a habit. Make this your second home. You can come in the morning, leave at night. We can give you 3 meals. That's not a problem. Talk to the monks, get advice, practice, meditate. Now in future, the Dhamma hall that we have at the front, that will be upgraded, and all the facilities that you need to practice and meditate will be made available there. So when that happens, you can come in any day of the week. So right now, of course, you have Wednesday and Saturday where Guru Hamdru does his sermons, and then you have the meditation programs alternating weeks, and then you have the English program. So these are the main events at the monastery. But in future, if there are other days of the week where you are free, come to the monastery. Make this your second home. If you can't make this your first home, at least make this your second home. I'm not one for giving up. That's the last. These are the words. These words I have taken out of my vocabulary. Giving up. It's not in my vocabulary. I used to have them. Again, a story I was sharing with people who I got to speak to yesterday. After I became a monk, it was part of one of the things I had to do was to study the Dhammapada. Right? So I have this book I usually carry it around with me, the Dhammapada. These are short stanzas that the Buddha preached on his various tours, seeing people, visiting people, giving them instruction. The Dhammapada is in Pali. I think last week I asked you all to go and get... Oh no, that was a sermon I did to a bunch of kids. I asked them to go and get themselves a Dhammapada in English. There are translations made available now. To keep a copy of it and study it, because there are jewels of wisdom and advice in these books. Because ultimately these are teachings of the Buddha. I urge you all to go and get yourselves a copy of it. If you find it difficult to read the Sinhala version, get the English version. There's one by Venerable Narada, very popular, the Dhammapada in English. And when I first started to study the Dhammapada, I had already made my mind up that I was not going to be able to do it, because it was in Pali. Many years of my life I studied and learned in English. And so I thought, I'm just not going to be able to do it. In my mind, I had already built up a mental wall, a barrier, and decided to myself, no, not possible, impossible. So I was quite adamant about it myself as well. And then, as you know, I have a teacher. See how lucky I am? And he kept saying, no, I'm not going to let you give up. Keep trying. Keep trying. Keep trying, he said. So I kept trying. It used to take me about a week to learn off by heart a 4-line stanza. 4 lines. Took me a week to learn it. And it was really tough. I didn't want to do it. I think that's where the difference was. I didn't want to do it. Not I couldn't. I didn't want to do it. But I didn't give up. I kept going. There are 426 stanzas altogether. 423. I've by-hearted about a third of the book now. And now I can just read it about 2 or 3 times and I can remember it. One gatha, if I just read 3 or 4 times, I can remember it. And that's only come through practice. By not giving up. So there's no such thing as impossible. I have proved that to myself. I want you all to prove that to yourselves. Take impossible out of your vocabulary. Anything is possible. A lot of the time people blame the wind when it's actually the set of the sail that has to be fixed. So what I try and help you, I inspire you to trim a better sail. A lot of people, they blame the weather, they blame the soil, they blame the crop, they blame the sun, they blame the stars, they blame the wind, right? They blame the economy, they blame the country, they blame the rulers, they blame everything under the sun, they blame. But they don't realize, they don't stop for a moment to think, once I've gone through my blame list, there's nothing else left. I mean, what else have you got left? What have you got left to work with? You blame the taxes, you blame the economy, you blame the education system, you blame the politicians, right? You blame the police force, you blame the army, you blame the president, you blame the prime minister, you blame the ministers, you blame your parents, you blame the sun, the soil, the stars, the water, everything. So what have you got left then? After you've gone through your blame list. That's all you got. If only people stopped and realized, you're blaming everything except the one thing that has to be blamed. And that is your attitude. Your life philosophy. You got to start with attitude. Ask yourselves, have you got a good attitude? The reason I'm bringing up these points is, we've come to 100 sermons, right? The next 100 is going to be much the same. If you don't change one thing. That's you. If you don't change yourself, the next 100 is going to be much the same. I don't want your next target to be 150 sermons. Let's wait for that and let's celebrate. That should not be your next target. Your next target should not be 125 sermons. Let's get to that, Swaminatha. Somehow let's do it, Swaminatha. You can do it. Come on, hurrah, hurrah, hurrah. Come on, Swaminatha. Wah, wah. That's not what this is about. I don't want you gidding me up. That's not what this is about. Giddy up, Swaminatha, giddy up. That's not what this is about. Ask yourselves, how much have you changed in the process? Because that's the acid test. That's the litmus test. How much have you changed? Are you more generous than you used to be? Are you a kinder person than you used to be? Are you a softer person than you used to be? Do you get angry like you used to? Or are you more docile? Are you more calm, cool, and collected? And do you know now when your mind's going astray? When your mind's like a stray dog, running after sensual desires, are you able to pick up on that now? That's what makes a difference. When your mind's like a pigsty, running after sensual desires. Now, this is not one of my analogies, that's the Buddha's analogy. The mind running after sensual desires is like a pig. Like a pig in a pigsty. Hopefully that's changed. This is what you need to ask yourselves. Because I can't see that. Only you can see that. I'm building up to the karmasthana we are going to be doing in a moment. This is all part of that. Because sometimes all we need to gear up our practice is just to stop for a moment. Think back at who you used to be. Look back retrospectively. Put yourself into a situation. Ask yourself, that situation that happened a year ago, right? When I got shouted at by my brother, when I got shouted at by my relatives, when I got blamed for something, how did I conduct myself? When my husband shouted at me, when my wife shouted at me for something I hadn't done, how did I conduct myself? Did I shout back? Was I so argumentative back then? Have I changed now? I always wanted to have the last word. Am I a different person now? These are the things by which you can check yourselves, folks. This is the gauge of your practice. This is how you check yourself. When you use the calipers to check, this is what you need to check. It's not about can you recite Paticca Samuppada from Avidya, Paccaya Sankhara all the way down to Jati, Jara, Marana. That's not what matters. It's not if when I ask you what are the four noble truths, you can say it's the first noble truth, the suffering, the second noble truth, the cause of suffering, the third noble truth, the cessation of suffering, the fourth, blah, 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 blah. That's not what this is about. It's not what this is about. I don't care if you've by-hearted the entire Tripitaka. I don't care. I don't have much regard for people like that anyway. It's a great thing to do, but not if the internal transformation has not happened. You have to be a better person. You have to be someone who people like to hang around. Not the wrong kind of people, the good kind of people. Ask yourselves, are you that kind of person? Are you more gentle than you used to be? When people do something that you don't like, when people come and demean you, when people come and undermine you, when you're not given the right place, when you're not given the place that you deserve in any event or circumstance in society. Simple things, right? Let's say you've got a reserved parking spot in the office, somewhere, wherever. And as you drive up, someone else has taken the parking space. How does that make you feel? That's what matters. If you still go ape mad, well, you haven't transformed from becoming an ape yet. You're only human physically, mentally. You're a monkey. This is not about physical cleansing. The Buddha's teaching is about mental cleansing. Mental transformation is what matters. If the food that has been cooked for you by your partner or by the maid, perhaps some of you may be lucky enough to have a maid at home, right? If the food that has been prepared for you is not to your taste, how do you react? Versus how did you used to react? Have you changed? If you used to be someone who used to complain all the time, how can anyone eat this crap? Take it away and cook it again. Are you still the same person? Or are you someone who can take it as it comes? That's what matters. What matters is not how much Dhamma you know. I will be the first to admit, I don't know a lot of Dhamma. I know very little. I always put my hand up and say, I know very little Dhamma. There are monks at our monastery who have by-hearted the entire Dhammapada. Several of them. I'm probably one of the ones who's gone through least of it. I know very little Dhamma. But that's not how I judge, how I gauge myself. It's a great thing if you can do it, but that's not how I gauge myself. How I measure myself is, how much have I changed? When we had those problems a few months ago, right, when people were throwing blame at us, abuse at us, and when they started slandering us on media. Do you remember those days? Even on public media, they started broadcasting programs about these vile people who live at this monastery, who are distorting the Buddha's teaching. And that was a good test for us. And every time we asked ourselves, how do we respond to these events? Do we fight back? There were people who actually came up to us and said, Swaminatha, you shouldn't rest. Take this to the courts. Fight for your rights. Free speech, right? Everyone's got the right to free speech. Stand up. Fight back. Don't let them walk all over you. Go to the media. Criticize them because they're criticizing you. What they were saying was, they're barking at you, so bark back at them. What does that make me? No, but we remain silent. There were a lot of people who actually walked away from us. Looking back at the last 2 years that have gone by, because it's going to be 2 years in a short while, right? I think in about a couple of months' time, it's going to be 2 years since we arrived at the monastery. Looking back at the things that have happened, there were people who walked away from us, who came to us at the beginning and then said, no, this is not right. You guys, you don't have a backbone. And what do you like? Stand up to adversity. Fight back. No, but we chose a different path. Because our path was laid down to us by the Buddha. A path of non-violence. A path of remaining unperturbed in the face of animosity. We chose the right path. I would do it again, exactly the same way. Not once have we regretted the decisions that we made. So the reason I'm relating this story to you is I want to ask you, how has your year been so far? Have you changed? That's what matters. Simple things, right? Someone brings you your tea and it's gone cold. How do you respond now? Some of you maybe, well, I was never bothered about cold tea. Okay. What about the amount of sugar? Now that. Are you still adamant about how many teaspoons of sugar needs to go in your tea? Can you just not drink it if it's too sugary? Or can you not drink it if it's too bland? Are you still someone who is adamant on having the tea perfected, fine-tuned to your liking? Something so simple as your cup of tea? Do you still fight with your wife about what TV channel you get to watch when you sit down? These are the questions to ask yourselves. Because the change that we expect of you at this monastery, I don't know about anywhere else, but at this monastery, what we expect of you folks is to become better people. We don't care about how much Dhamma you know. We don't care about that. But we do care about how you have transformed your lives. We don't like it when people come up to us and tell us about you, and sometimes people come and this person we saw in the town, right? He or she was having a brawl with someone, having an argument about something. Sometimes people come and tell us these stories. Not that we like to listen to people like this, but they come and drop these things on our ears. So we just remain quiet. And that tells us something. It tells us that you haven't changed yet. You're still the same person you used to be. If you want to make us proud, if you want to repay, as the gentleman who came and asked me 2 or 3 weeks ago, Swami, how can we repay the debts that we owe you for what you do for us? This is how you are going to do it. Become someone that we can be proud of. And that's not coming to the monastery to give us alms. That's not what we are proud about. It's not about becoming a figure that everyone cherishes. That's not what it is about. You may be known to none. That's okay. But change internally. Become a better person. Become a better husband. Become a better wife. Start at home. Become a better mother. Become a better daughter. Become a better son. Start at home. Be kinder to the folks at home. Be more gentle. Be a soft person. When people come and shout at you, can you say, "I'm sorry," even when it's not your fault? That is how we gauge you. That is what matters. To be able to say, "I'm sorry," when you know it's not your fault. If there's anything that I might have said or done that has hurt your feelings, "I'm sorry, sir." That is how we gauge if you are a better person. That is what matters. Are you okay being last? If you say, right, everyone stand up and form an orderly queue. We've got some books to give out. Right? Guru Swami Maharaj has just written a book. We are going to give out some books. The first 100 people will get them. Are you someone who wants to get to the front of the queue? You have failed the test. Or are you someone who is willing to sacrifice your opportunity for somebody else? That is what matters. You are more deserving of the book than the person who is first in queue. That is what matters. Be someone who has internalized the teaching that we have given you. Not someone who remembers the teaching. Not someone who has memorized the teaching. Be someone who has internalized it. Become living proof that the Buddha's teaching is practical. That's what I ask of you. These are the things I ask of you. Right? When we get to the 200th sermon, I want you to be better people than the people who came along to the 100th sermon. Become someone who has internalized the teachings that we have given you. Become someone who is free of anger. Become someone who's more patient. Become someone who can readily say sorry and apologize. As you're walking along the street, right, you've just gotten off your Mercedes Benz, right? You're in your tie, in your suit, in your briefcase in hand, right? A poor man walking up the street walks into you by mistake. If I was a bystander, I'd be looking to see who says sorry first. Hopefully, that's you. That's what matters. Because that is evidence that you're on the path to becoming a nobody. Throughout our lives, we struggle to become somebody. That's how we become a somebody, right? Stand above everyone else. Suppress everyone else so I can rise and shine. See, I'm somebody. Can you all see me at the back? I'm somebody. I am the buddy. No, become nobody. The great Elder Sariputta was a nobody. The great Elder Mahamoggallana was a nobody. Mahakashyapa was a nobody. The Supreme Buddha was a nobody. Become a nobody. The great Elder Bhadrakachayana was a nobody. Kisa Gotami was a nobody. I want you, madam, to be a nobody. I want you, madam, to be a nobody. And sir, I want you to be a nobody. Though I want you to be a nobody. And you, sir. And you, madam. Be a nobody. Let people come and wash their hands all over your head. All over you. Let them come and wash their hands. Let them come and wash their dirty linen over you. And say sorry. In case you were not good enough. Let people come and walk all over you. I know this goes against all the things you have learned in your life. Don't let people walk all over you. That was the path to becoming a somebody. You walking all over them. No. That is not what we expect of you. Become a nobody. Let people walk all over you. That is not to say let them abuse you. That's not to say let them take all the money you have and just turn a blind eye to it. That's not what I'm saying. Have humility in your heart. Be humble. Don't expect other people to say sorry to you. Be the one to say sorry. Be kind. Be gentle. Be soft. Be a better father. Be a better mother. Be a better husband and be a better wife. Be a better daughter and be a better son. Be a better teacher. Be a better student. I don't mean what grades you get. It's not about that. Be respectful towards others. Be respectful towards all. Towards all. Everyone on this planet, every being on this planet deserves your respect. But what did people tell you? You deserve respect from everyone else. No. Everyone else deserves your respect. Give and you shall receive, folks. That's the way it works. Give and you will receive. But don't give expecting to receive. That's not the point. Give without expectation of receiving, and you will receive many, many times over. But not because you want to receive. Just give. Give freely. Give without expectation. Give happiness to other people, and you will receive happiness. You know how happy I feel at the end of each of these sermons? If only you could see. If only you'd know, if only you could know how happy I feel at the end of all of these sermons, you wouldn't let me come and sit here. You'd come and sit here instead. You'd push me out of the way, so I'm like, no, let me do the sermon. Because I know with every sermon I give you happiness. I teach you how to be happy. I teach you how to be free of worry. I teach you how to add meaning to your lives. Not because I came to this world knowing all of these things. I learned them from my teacher, and my teacher from his teacher, and his teacher from his teacher, and his teacher from his teacher, all the way back to the supreme teacher, the perfect one. Give. Without expecting to receive. Give. You know, you're all well-to-do people, right? I've been meaning to say this for some time, but I keep forgetting. Glad I'm reminded of it today. Right? You're all well-to-do. Right? Generally, upper class, upper middle class people in society. There are a lot of people who have very little in society. They can only dream of the things that you have. They can only dream of it. Perhaps you can become a little bit more generous. I'm not saying you're not generous already, but perhaps you can become a little bit more generous. Never turn a blind eye to the poor man. Never turn a blind eye to a beggar who comes asking. Whatever little you can give, give without expecting. And don't worry for a moment to stop and think, well, what's the guy going to be doing with my money? That's not your concern. Remember, there's not a single being in this entire universe that's not been a mother or a father to you. If only I could show you the path. This is when this man who's just come up to you begging for nothing other than 10 rupees. This man was your mother 2,635 births ago. If I could prove that to you, you would give straight away. And this is how much this person did for you. Fed you, sheltered you, looked after you, took care of you. Don't turn a blind eye. This is an opportunity for you to repay your debts in samsara. Give. Because I know, you're fairly well-to-do people. This is why I appeal to you. If you know someone who doesn't have a shelter, and you can afford to make a little dwelling for them, put something together to make a hut so that they can go and live in it with their family, do it. And do it with joy in your heart. Do it with gratitude in your heart, knowing that this person has one day been a mother to me, one day been a father to me. This is why whenever we do a transfer of merits at the end of the sermons, I always remind you, right? Even those people who have lost their lives in the tsunamis, the people who have lost in the wars, think for a moment that they've all been a mother to you one day, they've all been a father to you one day. With that notion in mind is how you should transfer merits. So give. Something I used to do when I was in my lay life, every year, we'd pick a day, and my wife and I would go walk up to the wardrobe, open the wardrobe up, and any clothes that we haven't worn in a fair while, not the stuff it's due to be thrown away, not the worn out kind of stuff, the stuff that you don't wear. Right? And I'm sure every one of you will have this, a collection of clothes that you simply don't wear. You thought it was a good idea when you bought it, but then you changed your mind. Well, if you don't use it, then give it. It's not going to cost you anything. But you know what it's going to get you? An immense amount of joy in your heart. Tremendous. You'll feel so happy for having done that. Give. There are so many children out there. Orphans, without parents, poor people, nothing to eat, nothing to live by, no clothes, in rags. What my parents used to teach me when I was a young child, right? We never had birthday parties at home. What we used to do is for my birthdays, we used to cook food at home, packed it up in lunch packets. And that was what we did for my birthday. Went around the town handing out lunch packets to people who were hungry. So I learned giving from a very young age. And I'm sure there'll be people among you who have done the same or even better, even much more than this. But there'll still be those who haven't considered it yet. Well, let's start. Let's start. Let's start. The joy that you will feel in your heart, I tell you, as you give that out, expecting nothing in return, because now, through your understanding of the Dhamma, you know that there is nothing in this world that you can expect from another person. And I'll talk to you about this because I want to talk to you about Arya Maitri. Noble metta, and how you can cultivate that. So I'll talk to you about that today, in a moment. But now you're beginning to understand that the only things that the mind can really understand is this Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankara Viññāna. And there's nothing in this world that can actually bring you pleasure. And nothing worldly that can bring you pleasure. It's only relief from vexation that brings you pleasure. You understand this now. So actually when you give now to someone, you don't expect anything in return from them, because actually there's nothing in this world that anyone can give you to make you happy. Happiness is not something that someone else can give you. Have you learned at physics? There's the principle of energy. What is the principle of energy? Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be transferred. The principle of joy is the complete opposite of that. The principle of happiness is the complete opposite of that. Happiness can only be created or destroyed. It cannot be transferred from one person to another. Much the same like suffering. Suffering cannot be transferred from one person to another. It can only be created or destroyed in your own mind. So it's the complete opposite of energy. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be transferred from one source to another. But the joy in your heart, that cannot be transferred from one person to another. It can only be created in your own heart and in your mind. And that is based on, it's dependent on your understanding of the Dhamma. You know, when you first started listening to these sermons, I wouldn't have been so keen about, and I don't think I've ever mentioned these things to you. You know, go and give as much as you can, right? I've never mentioned these things. But now, having listened to the Dhamma, having internalized the Dhamma, you have become better people. Generosity has become a characteristic of your minds, of the very fabric of who you are. And now you are able to give without expecting in return. This is why now I ask you, give. So when you get back home today, or sometime the next week, open your wardrobes. You'll be surprised. And as you pull the stuff, I never knew I'd had this. All these saris, all these frocks, all these blouses, all these trousers, all these shirts, I never knew I had them. You'll be surprised how many pairs of shoes you've got. Ladies, take it all out. And then don't dump them in a bag. Give it nicely. Give it properly. Like you were gifting it to somebody. His old shoes, take it out, dust it, clean it. Give it a good clean. Put it into a neat little bag. Then go and give it. And if it's someone who has access to maybe a radio, or maybe they've got a CD player, perhaps, maybe give them a CD along with it. They'll make use of the shoes, but they'll also listen to the Dhamma. You can tell them, right? It's been this long, this has been a year since I received the Dhamma in my life. You can tell this to them as you give it to them, right? It's been a year since my life changed because of the Dhamma. I would not have come up to you and done this a year ago, but today I have changed. If you want to know how I changed, listen to the CD. Then give it. Once a month, what's stopping you from preparing some lunch packets at home? Once a month. Go and dish them out to poor people. Whether they go and sell them and then get money for it and then go do drugs, that's not your problem. Let them worry about that. If that's what they do, then the consequences of that, well, they're going to have to suffer. Remember the Devadutta Sutra? It's not your mother, nor your father, nor your husband, nor your wife that has to suffer the consequences of your actions. It's you, and you alone have to suffer for the consequences of your actions. You give with generosity and no expectation in heart. Let them decide to do whatever they want with it, but you give. And whenever you give, remember, they've all been connected to you in this infinitely long journey in samsara. When you give to them, make that resolve in your mind. If there are any debts that I owe you in this infinitely long journey in samsara, you don't have to say it out loud to me, right? Listen to me, okay? Pay attention now. No, you don't have to say that out loud. In your mind, you can reflect on this. If there are any debts that I owe you in this infinitely long journey in samsara, may this be a token of me repaying my debts to you. May you be well. May you be happy. May you attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Remember, this is a human being you are giving to. It's not an animal. It's a human being. A human being much like you. It requires a tremendous amount of merit to become a human being. Becoming a human being is no easy task. So actually, whether that man's poor, it doesn't matter what religion he is, what faith he is, doesn't matter. Just simply becoming a human being requires a tremendous amount of merit. So who's standing in front of you is someone who is actually someone of high moral character. Maybe not in this birth, but was in a previous birth. So nothing's lost. Once a month, pick a day. And that's, what's that? 12 days a year. Don't have to do hundreds. 10. You throw a party once a month, don't you? And you feed people who've got plenty. And after all, when they come together, the stuff they talk about is only stuff that takes you to the hells anyway. Right? Rubbish. Gossiping. Amounts to nothing. And you haven't acquired any merit by doing it, by throwing a party. There's no merit to be acquired in doing that. But if only you prepare 10 packets of lunch, 10 lunch packets, go and give it out once a month. Here are things I want you to do. And I agree, I'm sure there'll be people among you who do it already, but if not, let's start now. So get home, open up your wardrobe. And there may be some among you if you've been wearing glasses for a long time, spectacles, right? There may be pairs of spectacles lying at home, making no use to anybody. There are people who can't afford spectacles. This is something I noticed that people, when I used to live in the UK, people used to do this. If there are spectacles they've got at home because the prescription has changed now, so they need to get more powerful lenses or whatever. The old pair, they go and give it away to someone who can use it. Go and give it to an optician, an optometrist, whoever, right? And if someone comes in with this prescription, let them have it. For how much? Free. Why? You're repaying your debts. If you've got old stuff at home, maybe a watch that you don't no longer use, give it. The less you have, the less you need to protect anyway. Give. If you have an extra TV at home, you haven't switched on in a long time, All it's doing is gathering dust. Give it away. Give as much as you possibly can. But give expecting how much in return? Nothing in return. Like I give you now. I give you, expecting nothing in return. I learned this from my master. You also give, expecting nothing in return. And also don't forget to give the greatest gift there is, and that is the gift of Dhamma. The gift that excels all gifts. Anyone who has the potential to understand this, give them the gift of Dhamma. Whether it's in Sinhala or English, make sure. Whenever you give something, right, if it's a pair of shoes, an old sari, right, a blouse, a shirt, a pair of jeans, right, give a disc with it. They may not listen to it, but one day it's going to find a good home. One day someone's going to listen to it. It may be not today, it may not be today, maybe not tomorrow, maybe in 5 years' time, someone finds it, what's this disc all about? Puts in the CD player. They get to hear the pristine Dhamma. Transforms their life. They become great people just like you. Then, a whole new chain reaction. So let's get to the Karmasthana then. Reason I've been saying all this is I want you all to take a moment now to see the transformation that the Dhamma has had on your lives. Yes, I always, whenever you come here, right, I do tell you off sometimes when you fall asleep, and sometimes when you don't come along regularly, I do tell you off from time to time, right? But that's for your own good. But at the same time, I want you to realize how great people you are. I really want you to realize that. I want you to think about the kind of character that you have built up. What a great person you have become. And the credit of that is not to the person. This is not about an egoistical exercise. This is about reflecting on how much the Dhamma has touched your life. So here's how you got to do this. Look back at your lives. Pick a situation. A situation perhaps you faced maybe 6 months ago, a year ago, before you actually got the teaching. An event that you're not proud of today. Back then you were very proud of. I showed him who was boss. I taught him a new page that day. That's how you reacted then. But today, on retrospect, you are shameful of that. Today you know that was not a dignified way of conducting myself. I was very undignified. Because today you look through the world through your new lens, and that is the lens of the Dhamma. You have begun to see the world as being anicca, dukkha, anatta. In this essenceless world, where everyone's struggling to stay afloat, where everyone's struggling for happiness, a happiness that no one can ever achieve, but with the false view that happiness can be gained by hurting, harming other people. This used to be my view, but now it has changed. How would you conduct yourself in the same situation today? In the same set of circumstances, how would you conduct yourself today? This is what I want you to think about. And then ask yourself, how come my response to that event is now different? Then you will realize it is because of the Dhamma. Because I don't value the things that I used to value back then. If it was an argument about something, right? Let's say there was an argument. People have broken up because toilet seat. They couldn't agree on whether it should be up or down. I'm not making this stuff up. You think I'm kidding? No, I'm serious. Couples have broken up because they couldn't agree on whether the toilet seat has to be up or down. They've been going out with each other for 8 years, they got married, and then they broke up a week later. Why? Because they couldn't agree whether the toilet seat had to be up or down. I'm not kidding, I'm serious. Do you have things like that in your life? So look back and ask yourselves, right? Silly little things. Don't you have those moments in life where you look back today and go, how silly I was to argue about something so petty like that? Why did I undermine myself so much? Why did I go hanging about it with something so minuscule? Something so negligible? Something so insignificant? But I kept going after it. Today you look back and you'll be shameful of that. Don't you all have moments like that in your life? I have plenty. If you don't have any, I'll share one with you. Just put your hand up. No, Swami, I don't have anything like that in my life. I've always been very proud of every decision I made. Well, you haven't lived then. Go live and come back. Right? Whether it's with your husband, whether it was with your wife, whether it was with your children, whether it was with your parents, whether it was with your best friend, and that's why you broke up. You were best mates before then, and then you broke up. Why? Because you were so argumentative. You were so obsessed about this one petty little thing that you just couldn't be the second. You couldn't be second, you always wanted to be first. That was because you didn't have an understanding of the Dhamma. But now things are very different. If you replay the same situation today, you would act very differently today. I want you to relive one of those moments. Imagine yourself in one of those moments. Right? Go back to the past. Dig up this old grave of memories that you have tried to forget, but bring one back to the present. Put yourself in that situation today. In the same set of circumstances, how might you conduct yourself today? And when you come out with the answer to that, when you come out with the response to that, you will realize the reason that I have come back today with a different response is because of the Dhamma. I'm a better person. I'm a very different person. That will make you feel so happy about yourself. It'll make you feel really proud about yourself. Again, this is not an exercise to keep pumping your ego. That's not what this is about. This is simply for you to realize and reflect on how much the Dhamma has transformed your life. For that, you will be eternally grateful for the Dhamma. You'll be eternally grateful for towards the Mahasangha, and you'll be eternally grateful to the Buddha. You'll be eternally grateful towards the Triple Gem. Does that make sense? Okay. So I want you all to take a few minutes, look back at your past, bring one moment in your life, one situation in your life, where you know, I'm not proud of how I acted in that moment. But today, very different person. Today I would act very differently. This is how I would act today. Different outcome would have come had I done it back then. This is not about regretting. Shucks, I should have been different. No, this is not about regretting. It's simply about realizing for yourself that the Dhamma has actually touched your lives. I want you to experience that. I want you to feel that. I want you to know that you have come a long way on the path. Because when you begin to experience that, this is where Priti Sambojjhanga is going to start to appear in your life. This is one of the factors of enlightenment. There are 7 factors of enlightenment. Priti or joy is one of them. And the joy factor of enlightenment comes from reflecting on the change in person and in the person that you are today compared to who you used to be. Okay? So we'll take a few moments. Let's reflect on that. And then we'll continue the conversation after that. If you're done with one, you can take a second example and do the same. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. May I and all beings in all worlds be healed with the ultimate bliss of Nibbana. Healed with the ultimate bliss of Nibbana. Healed with the ultimate bliss of Nibbana. May I and all beings in all worlds be healed with the ultimate bliss of Nibbana. Healed with the ultimate bliss of Nibbana. Healed with the ultimate bliss of Nibbana. May I and all beings in all worlds be healed with the ultimate bliss of Nibbana. Healed with the ultimate bliss of Nibbana. Healed with the ultimate bliss of Nibbana. Okay. How did you manage that? How do you feel now about the path that you have come? The path that you have come on, and the journey that you have made? You should sense, you should begin to be feeling that your lives are being transformed. There are 3 stanzas in the Dhammapada, and as I was reflecting on it, just came to mind. I can't remember it off by heart now, but I'll read it out to you. Susukang vata jivama, verinesu averino, verinesu manussesu viharama averino. The Buddha says, we who have gone forth. So he's not just talking about the monks, he's talking about people who have had this transformation in their lives. Live freely, live happily. Among those men who live with hatred, anger, and malice in their minds and in their hearts, we live free from hatred, anger, and malice. Therefore, we live freely, we live happily. Susukam vata jivam aturesu anatura, aturesu manussesu viharam anatura. Among men who are like vultures, who keep going after the sensual desires, we live free from such desires. Our hearts and minds are free of the entanglements of desire. And with such joy, we conduct our lives freely and happily. Susukam vada jivam ussukesu anusukha, ussukesu manussesu viharam anusukha. Among men whose conquest in life, whose purpose in life is the indulgence of pleasures, sensuality, achieving what they don't have and others have, and therefore making every effort, striving to achieve and gather and accumulate what they don't have but what others do. We live free, having freed our minds of such desires, of such temptations, of such entanglements. We live freely, we live happily. These are all karmasthana. And that is what I got you to practice now. Because the transformation that you have, that has happened in your lives, because of the Dhamma, has now allowed you to be free. Be happier people than you used to be. Free of desire. To whatever extent you have managed to do it, by that extent you should feel happier, you should feel lighter, you should feel more whole and more at peace, free of anger, free of desire, free of delusion. So the first portion that we did there, so the last 15 minutes was a practice run for the next bit, which we are going to be doing now. So I first ask you to think of an example or a situation in your life where you will have conducted yourself in a very different way to how you would conduct yourself now, should the event present itself once again. So what we're going to do next is an extension of that. Before I come to the concluding part of today's session, which will be the noble metta, and I will explain that in further detail a little later. When the Buddha was asked, what is your dispensation? How would you define your dispensation? The Buddha says, Sabba papassa karana. Refrain from all evil deeds. Kusalasa upasampada. Engage in the cleansing of your mind by removing all defilements in your mind. So he talks about ragakya, deshakya, mohakya. Removing desire, aversion and delusion from your mind. Sachitta pariyodapana. For this, one has to take the bull by the horns. Which bull is he talking about? Yourself, absolutely. The bull with horns of desire, aversion and delusion. Take it by the horns and tame it. Etang buddhana sasanam. That is my dispensation. That is what I came here to talk to you about. This is what I came into this world to expound. This is my teaching, the Buddha says. So he starts off by saying, Sabba papassa karana. Cleanse your mind of the defilements. Refrain from all evil deeds. So this is the extension to the first part that we did. There are 10 evil deeds that the Buddha said you should all refrain from. We should all refrain from. The unwholesome deeds. Remind me what they are? Let's start with the bodily actions. First, killing. Taking the life of others. Only under certain circumstances has the Buddha said it's okay to do that. What are they? No, he's never said that's okay. No, it's never acceptable to take the life of another being. What if they're cockroaches? Then it's okay, surely. Blood-sucking mosquitoes? Those pesky little things that keep flying around here. Surely they're okay, right? To rid the world of them? No. Who gives you authority to decide if some other being lives or dies? That's not yours to decide. It's not up to you to decide that. So under no circumstance is it permissible to take the life of another being. Refrain from stealing, taking that which does not belong to you. And you can take this to whatever length you're capable of, to whatever extent you're capable of. Right? On one occasion, I'll tell you how far this can go, depending on how keen you are about your practice. On one occasion, there was a monk who was very virtuous in his conduct. And he was very happy about the way he conducted himself, always being very mindful about his actions, his words, right, and his thoughts. On one occasion, he went to the lake to bathe, and having seen a flower, he bent down to smell it. This is flower, something so innocent. On the outside, it doesn't look like there's anything wrong with it, right? He just only smelled down to smell this flower, just inhale the smell the fragrance of this. At which point there was a deva who admonished this monk. He said, "How dare you?" There was a deva who appeared in front of this monk and said, "How dare you? How dare you take something that's not given to you?" So what was this monk doing? All he was doing was inhaling the smell of this flower, but that which was not given to him. It was not permitted for him to take this. Just something so innocent as that. And then he realized, I'm doing something I'm not supposed to do. Why did he inhale the scent of this flower? To relieve himself of vexation. What else? Because it smells nice, so I better take a sniff of this. That's what he was doing. It doesn't look like there's anything wrong with it. He's not taken something that, in a worldly sense, it doesn't belong to anybody. It belongs to everyone, right? The world's flowers, everyone belongs to everyone. But what the Deva came and admonished and refuted this person was saying that you are doing something you shouldn't be doing. So the monk became very shameful about what he had done. And he secluded himself and practiced and cultivated his path and eventually became an arahant. So these are all stories that we can learn from. Now, whether they are true or not, who cares? Now, did the Deva really come? Which world did he come from? How do we know he was really there? Right? It doesn't matter. When I was younger, my grandmother, she used to tell me that in the Buddha's time, all the trees and rocks and animals, apparently they used to talk. So my grandmother taught me this, okay? In the Buddha's time, all the animals used to talk. And the trees had voices, and all the rocks, they had voices. So she said, Putta, be kind towards all beings. And all these animals, they feel. Today you can't understand what they're saying, but in the Buddha's time they all talked with each other, to people, right? They said they talk just like you and I are talking at the moment, my grandmother used to say. And she said the trees used to talk, Putta. So only pluck flowers if you want to worship or if you want to offer them to the Buddha. Don't pluck flowers otherwise, for other reasons. Don't harm the trees. Don't just go and start plucking all the leaves out of the trees, because I used to be a very mischievous lad back then. So that's not changed much. But this is how she used to teach me. Back then, the biggest problem I had was, how come trees used to talk? How did they do that? Remember, I was a very materialistic person, right? This was my question. How did they talk? But I was asking the wrong question. I should have thought to myself, why is my grandmother telling me these things? My grandmother seriously thought that, trees used to talk back in the time of the Buddha. She genuinely believed that. But it saw her well. It didn't do her any harm by believing in that trees can talk and trees have life in them. Just like you and I, they have a mind and they experience pain, because all she did by believing in that was not harm them. She looked after them. She watered them. And then she taught me, Putta, this is how you should be. You should be kind to your environment. Don't damage the environment. Protect the trees. Wasn't that a great lesson she gave me? What a great lesson. What a great grandma I had. She used to teach me these things. And she said, be kind to all animals. Even little insects. She said, they can think. You can't hear them, but they're talking to each other. They're hungry. Back in the Buddha's time, they used to talk to you and they used to say, I'm hungry, can you feed me please? My question was, how did they talk? What language? Did they speak in Sinhala or English? These are the problems that I had. But I missed the point. That was not the point she was trying to make. See what great gifts our ancestors gave us, our elders. It's such a shame that young children these days don't pay much attention to the elders of our society. All the wisdom that they accumulated over the years and the upbringing that they had. A lot of the time they had all the spare time they would spend at the temple. They visited the monks, took instruction from them. Because they realized our purpose has to be to attain nirvana. The things that we have to do, we have to do. Right? We have to feed the family. We have to go and, cultivate the fields, we have to grow crops, we have to do all these things, but not because we can, but because we have to. They taught their children, not because they can, but because they have to. Today, we learn, we go and do jobs and we earn money because we can, not because we have to. We've forgotten why we do these things. Because we've forgotten that all of these things are a means to an end. But our grandparents and their parents and our great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents, right? They had a very good upbringing, which is exactly what young children these days are lacking. So don't give them too much slack. Keep them close. Don't cut them loose. Because if you don't give them those teachings, then with every generation that passes by, right, the values that we held on to so dearly, the virtues that we had, the values that kept us, that made us strong, that kept us united, that kept us happy, that helped us and that taught us to be content with what we have, all of these values we are losing. It's going out of fashion. So don't let that happen to your children. Give them freedom, yes. But then equip them with all the lessons that they need to learn so that they can make the right decisions about their life. It's not just science and math that they need. It's not just physics and chemistry that they need to learn. It's not just biology and physiology. It's not just that they need to learn. They need to learn that, yes, but because they have to. Don't forget the virtues. Don't forget the values. Don't forget goodness, kindness, generosity, charity, benevolence. Don't forget these things. Make sure you teach them these. So, coming back to the point I was talking to you about. The Buddha said, refrain from all the unmeritorious deeds. There are 3 unmeritorious deeds that one conducts through body, and that is taking the life of other beings, however large or small that may be, taking away that which does not belong to you, whatever it may be, and indulging in sensual, or the modern version of it, sexual misconduct. If you're someone who's serious about the path, I think the version that is more prudent to use is sensual misconduct. Because I don't understand what is the right way to sensual conduct? I don't understand that. Given that sensuality is simply madness. Relief from vexation, that's all it is. So I don't see how the right way of sensual conduct and wrong sensual conduct is. But, in a worldly sense, we've been taught to stick to one partner, right? And don't go looking for sensual gratification from other people, as well as those who you are not entitled to receive such gratification from. Young children, as well as someone who's not your spouse. These days people have become so warped in the way that they think. Their sensual desires have grown out of control. You know how difficult it is sometimes these days to travel in public transport without someone leaning up against you. It's such a shame that our society has transformed into this vile cesspit. But thanks to the Dhamma, you are not like that. Even if you used to be, you're not like that anymore. So you are someone who is now pure of physical conduct. You're pure in your physical conduct. So you do not steal, you do not kill, and you do not indulge in sensual or sexual misconduct. Therefore, you are pure of physical conduct. You are pure in the way you conduct your body. You are pure in the way you conduct your speech. This is because the Dhamma has now touched your lives. But back then, lying, didn't have to think twice about it. If I have to lie, I'll lie. Doesn't matter. If I have to use harsh speech to get done what I need done, I will use it. And I'm a man, I've got guts, I've got courage, right? I'll show him who's boss. I don't mind shouting at somebody. I can teach him a lesson, right? Just think for yourself, right? If either you or your partners or whoever, right? You're stuck in traffic, someone cuts up in front of you. How do you talk to them? Ever so nicely? Excuse me, sir, I was there first. Please, would you mind joining the queue? All the F words start coming out, right? And then from the Western world, right, people have learned new ways of new hand gestures. One finger goes up, the other four comes down, right? You know what I'm talking about. I'm seeing these things now in our society. These are not things that we Sri Lankan people used to do. It's becoming the norm now, which is terrible. Terrible. What a terrible mess we've gotten ourselves into. This is mistake colossal. Then there's backbiting. No, I think 90% of conversations that happen in offices these days is probably backbiting. Slanderous speech, gossiping about each other. He said this about you, she said that about you. You know what she said about you? This is what she said about you. She said you were a... Sometimes for personal gain. People even make this stuff up. Lying. People will make stuff up for their personal gain. Like it's nobody's business. How many times have you been victim? Well, you only get what you deserve though, right? Why did you deserve it then? Because you did it to somebody else. You only get what you deserve. Not what you desire. You only get what you deserve. Slanderous speech. How many times have people been slandering about you in the office, trying to take away the opportunities that you were on path to or destined to get and receive, but they made up a story about you. It's easy for you to relate when I say, think of you as the victim. And then I'll say, why do you deserve it? Why did you deserve it? Because otherwise, tell people, you shouldn't be lying, madam. I don't lie, Swaminathan. Don't people lie about you? They do, Swaminathan. Why is that? Oh. You only get what you deserve. All those things that used to happen, like I said at the beginning, right? When we were trying to take the Dhamma to the people, and they said we were distorting the Dhamma, they started slandering us, right? And mocking us. Why do you think we got it? Because we deserved it. Why else? Because I know I will have done the same to somebody else. I will have done the same to somebody else. Every time someone called me Tatya, why do you think that happens to me? It's because I would have done that to somebody else. And the more you are able to understand this law of cause and effect, the more you are able to live at peace, because you know the consequences are the results of your own actions. Then you have no one else to point a finger at. You can only point the finger that way. The sad thing is, though, when someone makes it their responsibility, their duty, to bring consequences of my actions to me, they are in turn doing evil for which they're going to have to suffer consequences, which is the sad thing. They don't realize that. That is the sad part. If the consequences of my actions could be repaid to me and another person not taking on their shoulders, this is what kamma vipaka vattanti vipaka kamma sambhava. Right? The vipaka is what I receive, consequences of my actions, but someone else is doing a karma to bring me my vipaka. Like the postman. Remember Guru Hamdu used to talk about it? He gave the analogy for postman. The postman brings you what you deserve. Right? Whether it's a check or a final notice, the postman has no decision to make about that. It's not his call what he delivers in the post. It's whatever you deserve, you'll come and drop in the post box. Is it right then for you to, if he brings in a check, invite him and serve lunch, and then if he brings you a final notice, to hit him back with a stick? No, it's not, because the postman is simply doing his duty. So you realize what I get is simply what I deserve. With this understanding, you are now refraining yourselves from engaging in false speech, in slandering others, right? Frivolous speech, backbiting. So ask yourselves how you have changed as a result of the Dhamma touching your lives. The first step we did, there was a practice exercise for what we are going to be doing now. This is the extended version of it, which I want you to practice at home as well. Because the unmeritorious deeds, the 10 unmeritorious deeds that the Buddha said, refrain from. At all costs, refrain from them. No excuses. Refrain from them at all costs. Someone who believes, who accepts that this world is pleasurable, joyful and essence-full, is always inclined towards the unwholesome deeds. Let me explain how that is so. A man believes that gold is pleasurable, joyful and essence-full because he gives it value. How much of value is gold to an arahant? Absolutely nothing. None. Because they don't see value in anything in this world. Right? So, to more or less an extent, there are things in this world that we all give value to. Right? So, whatever item or person or event that you give value to, the reason you give it value is because you consider that person, object or event to bring you pleasure. Whether it's gold, a slice of cake, right? Or, I don't know, biryani, whatever. Whatever example you want to use. There's something out there that brings you pleasure, that brings you joy, and therefore essence-full. For as long as this is the case, the mind is always vexing. The mind is vexing to acquire what you desire. Let's say, let me give you this example, right? Let's say someone really, really, really likes beef. Okay? So they've never had beef before, but someone comes up to them and says, "Hey mate, have you not tried beef?" What? Beef. What's that? Well, it's this meat. You've really got to try it. It's the next best thing to sliced bread. You really got to try it. How do I find it? Well, you get it on a cow. Oh, so where can I get it from? You get it from the butcher. Where's the butcher? Well, it's just 2 blocks down the road. You can go and go to the butcher's. I said, okay, I'll get it someday. So the next day he goes to the shop, he buys beef and he tries it out, and like it was promised to him, he finds it pleasurable. Why is that? Well, he's being relieved of vexation, right? As the relief of vexation coincides with the taste of beef, these two happen at the same time, and therefore he comes to the conclusion that, oh, my friend was so right, beef is yummy. Again, another day comes along, so again he wants to have beef. But this time, all the butchers, they've run out of beef. They no longer stock because, I don't know, there's been some kind of infection or something. The butchers have run out of beef. But this guy really, really wants it. So he looks around, no beef. He tries this shop, that shop, the supermarkets, everywhere, no beef. But he really wants it now. He waits a few days, he waits a few weeks, but he really, really wants it now. He just can't, he can't, the temptation is so overwhelming that he can't control himself. You can substitute beef with any other example you want. I'm talking about things I can talk about here. For some, it will be sexual indulgences. Right? Why do people lean against others on public transport? Right? You ask yourself, instead of talking about that, I'm talking about beef. Right? So you substitute the appropriate example. So now this guy says, I need beef, and all the butchers have run out of it. What can I do? Now he knows that there's a farm, or there's a large piece of land 2 blocks down the road, and the owners have gone somewhere on holiday or somewhere. So he goes round and he sees there's a cow. Beef comes from the cow. Oh, right, so I know I can get some beef now. Doesn't matter that the shops don't stock it. Now, the extent to which he wants this is so strong that he's willing to kill this animal to get it, what it is he desires. So he'll walk over, slaughter the animal if he must. Or, have you not seen cows with limbs missing? Have you not? Look it up. Some people, they're so kind, right? If all they want is a joint, they'll just cut the joint off. They're so kind. They won't kill the animal, they just can't cut the limb off and then take it home. There are people like that. So kind. I've seen animals like that, with a limb gone missing, and you ask the owner, "Wait, what happened to this animal?" Well, just the other day, someone had come and cut this animal's limb off. See what length people will go to? Why do you think people steal? I'm not talking about those people who can't, who don't have a way to make a living. Not that you can condone such behavior, but there are others who want something so strongly, who desire something so strongly that they will go to any extent by hook or by crook to acquire it. So this man goes, kills the animal, takes the meat, and now he's satisfied because he's now able to relieve himself of vexation. The day that comes where he realizes there's not a single item of food in this world that can actually relieve myself from mental vexation, and give me pleasure, because pleasure is not in the food that I eat, it's not in the taste that I can take in, it's not in any of these things that my eyes, ears, nose, tongue and body can bring me. When he realizes that, well, it's too late now. The deed has already been done. The deed has already been done. Why do you think there's so much child abuse going on in the world? Young children get abused sexually. Why do you think there's so much abuse going on? Women getting abused. And then some places you find men being abused. So it doesn't matter what sex you are. When there's someone out there who wants pleasure so much, they will not stop until they get what it is that they desire. Why do you always have to keep a watchful eye over your children? Why is it when your daughter goes to tuition class, as a mother, you always have to keep an eye out. Why do you have to keep ringing her every 10 minutes? Where are you, Where are you now? Did you get on the bus? Did you get off the bus? Where are you now? Are you at the bus hall? Have you left the bus hall? Where are you now? Why do you have to keep doing that? Because there are vultures out there, two-legged ones, and they don't have wings. Raga, Dvesha, Moha walking on two legs. And that's what it is. Desire, aversion, and illusion walking on two legs. Engaging in sexual misconduct. Because when you want something and you see the problem as being, I don't have what I want, then you will go to whatever length to acquire it. Because there's only so much you can go in terms of trying to control yourself. I can guarantee that the first time that person saw your child, they would have thought, no, you know what, it's wrong. It's wrong for me to do this. I shouldn't do this. So they tried to restrain themselves. Tried to, but couldn't. Why are there so many people in the prisons? They tried to restrain themselves. Of course they did. But they couldn't. They couldn't because they didn't have the Dhamma. Because you can only go so far in terms of restraining yourself. Eventually, there's going to be one straw that breaks the camel's back. And it's going to be one straw that's required. The last straw that breaks the camel's back. The amount of vexation that you can tolerate is the same. It's the same philosophy that goes, same principle that goes there. There's only so much that you can tolerate. There's going to be a point at which you can't tolerate it anymore. At that point, you will want to relieve yourself of vexation. So the only way really you can expect to see a world where people have refrained from unmeritorious deeds, a world where people abide by the precepts that they have vowed to abide by, is where they have an understanding of the Dhamma. Everywhere else, there will always be people who will be evil. There will always be people who will engage in unmeritorious deeds, unwholesome deeds, and who will cause harm and damage to other people's things, and generally the world around them. It's always going to be the case. At least until someone becomes a Sotapanna. Because when one becomes a Sotapanna, they begin to realize, the world is not my source of pleasure. Pleasure is simply relief from vexation. It's not something that can come to me from the outside world. Therefore, there are no sights or sounds or smells or tastes or touch that can bring me pleasure. You see, you should start to see the connection between unwholesome deeds and not understanding the Dhamma. Why does someone kill? It's because what you want is out there with them. If I can't take it by hook, then I have to take it by crook. If I can't ask them nicely, if I ask them nicely and they're going to give it to me, then I have to get it by force. Why do you want it in the first place? Because you expect that thing to bring you pleasure. See, pleasure comes from the outside world. Now, how do you stop someone from engaging in unwholesome deeds? Now, that's why you need the police. That's why you need the forces. I don't understand this, right? You have the law enforcement agencies on the one hand, and then on the other hand, you have advertising. It's counterintuitive. Because one keeps saying, this world is pleasurable, joyful, and essence-full. Right? Go and get it. Go and get it. And then on the other hand, when you go and get it, now they lock you up in prison. Because so much stress is being put into people's minds. But, there's not enough work for people to do on some occasions, or on other times where people are not encouraged to actually get up on their own 2 feet and go and start working and, serve themselves, serve their country. People are not being encouraged to do that. But that doesn't stop the constant pressure that comes from the outside world. There's pleasure. Come on, get it. Come on, get it. Come on. Enjoy. It's counterintuitive. So without an understanding of the Dhamma, people will constantly and continuously believe that pleasure comes from the outside world. It's the sights that bring me pleasure. It's the sounds that bring me pleasure. Smell and taste and touch that brings me pleasure. Why does someone break into a bakery? Steal cake from it? Why? Because they believe that's where pleasure comes from, and the guy gets locked up in prison for 10 years. Things like this happen. 10 years in prison. Why? Because he was not given the Dhamma. 10 years in a cell because he broke into a bakery to steal a slice of cake. Is the punishment too tough? That's the wrong question to ask. That's the wrong question to ask. The question should not be, is the punishment too tough or too lenient? But isn't that what people are talking about? That's the wrong question to ask. So what is the right question to ask? Why did he do it? Why did he do it? He did it because he believed that life without a slice of carrot cake is not worth living. Because that's where pleasure is. And every day as he walked past the shop, I need that somehow. I need it somehow. I so need it. I just don't have the money for it. What can I do? One day he decides to break into the shop. And along with that, gives up 10 years of his life. Gets locked up in a cell, prison cell. That's it. What if that man, when he knew I need this so badly, what if he walked into a temple? What if he went and spoke to a monk? What if he came and asked you? Would you not have given him the right instruction? Would you have not advised him? Sir, you are suffering because of the wrong problem. You think you want it but don't have it, and that's where the problem is. That's not where the problem is. You wanting it, you desiring it, that's where the problem is. You need to realize that the things you want are not sources of pleasure. Pleasure is simply relief of vexation that happens purely in your mind. Now, you would have explained it to them, wouldn't you? Or would you rather see a man get locked up in prison for 10 years? What a waste of human life. How much service could that man have rendered to society? He was a man who was about to become a doctor one day. This is a man who was about to become a teacher one day. This is a man who was about to become a police officer one day. Or some civil servant one day. But now he spent 10 years in prison. A young man, only 25 years of age. He just didn't have the Dhamma. What a waste of a life. Have you not seen people getting beaten up in buses because they went and leaned up against someone? They get into the bus with a full set of teeth. They get out with barely any. Beaten up, black-eyed, right? Face pulped up. Because the question they ask is, what is the punishment we should give this guy? Is it too tough or is it too lenient? That's the wrong question to ask. Beating this guy up is not the answer to the problem. You know how in Sri Lanka, right? And it's shameful to say this, but it's the truth. If you get, as you're driving up on the street, a vehicle comes and bangs into you, what happens? The guy gets out. If someone gets run over, then everyone comes to beat the driver up. Sometimes, vehicles can get set alight because someone, the driver accidentally hit this man on the street. Sometimes it was the man's fault, not the driver's fault. But you see, again, they're looking at it from the wrong angle. So there's a big debate about, are we being too tough on our people? Is it too tough, too lenient? That's not the question to be asking. Why do people behave like this? That is the question to be asking. With no understanding of the Dhamma. Expecting suffering and pleasure to come from the outside world. This is why I said, energy is the complete opposite of how suffering and pleasure works. Energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It can only be transferred from one to another place. But suffering and pleasure are the complete opposites. It cannot be transferred from one person to another. It cannot be transferred from one object to another person. It can only be created or destroyed. How so? When attachment arises in the mind, then there is suffering. And when relief of that attachment, or when the relief of vexation happens, that's where pleasure is. So it can only be created or destroyed. It cannot be transferred. So with no realization of this, people keep trying to solve the wrong problem. People don't see that desire is the problem. People see that not having what you desire is the problem. So they spend life going from womb to tomb. That's what life is, right? Womb to tomb? Yeah, that's what life is. From womb to tomb. So people spend life going from womb to tomb, solving the wrong problem. Not all the money in the world can solve the right problem. It's only right view that can solve the right problem. And that right view is Sammaditthi. And hopefully that's where you are at now. Or that's where you're getting to at least. So with this understanding now, you see the world in a very different way. You don't expect the world to bring you pleasure. You don't expect sight, sound, smell, taste and touch to bring you pleasure. You understand that the world is no longer a source of pleasure. Sights and sounds and smells and tastes cannot bring me pleasure. Therefore, this is how a Sotapanna has no interest, has no desire in engaging in unwholesome deeds. Because it may be something you have wondered. How come a Sotapanna doesn't engage in unwholesome deeds, Swamin Wahansa? Here's the answer. It's very logical. This is not magic. It's very logical. Because he is someone who has understood that pleasure does not come from the outside world. So if it doesn't come from the outside world, then what's the point of trying to acquire it? Why did you, all your lives, the things you acquired, why did you acquire them? Because you thought it brings you pleasure. It didn't really, but you had this view, you believed that they were sources of pleasure. That's why you went ahead and built your life around these things. You acquired them. But the day that comes where you realize, no, none of these things actually bring me pleasure. How much more are you going to exert yourself to acquiring these things? None. So you see, if you don't want it, when you can get it lawfully, will you want to steal it? I'm going to give you something for free. Okay? I'm going to give you this for free, and you don't want it. Do you want to steal it now? Do you understand my point? If you realize that there's nothing in this world that can bring you happiness, if you have realized that, and I'm willing to offer it to you for free, do you want it now? It doesn't bring you pleasure. Do you want it now? No. Now would you want to steal it? Of course not. But if you believe that this brings you pleasure, if I give it to you for free, whoa, that's very kind of you. What if I say, I'm not going to give it to you, this is mine, and you shan't have it? And you believe that this is your source of pleasure, what would you do? Of course. This is why a Sotapanna does not engage in unwholesome deeds. He has no desire in acquiring worldly objects or things or people or anything like that. So here's what we're going to reflect on now for a little while. Someone who has understood the Dhamma is the only one who can actually profess and claim to be free of evil deeds, because they have realized killing, taking the life of another being, does not bring me pleasure, so why bother doing it? You see, before you understood the Dhamma, you may not have killed because it was wrong. People would shun you for it, people would criticize you for it, but that's not why you do it. That's not why you don't do it now. The reason you shouldn't be doing it now is because there's no point in doing it. As a young child, I didn't like killing, because when I killed the animal, I thought, poor animal, it's gonna hurt it, so I shouldn't kill it. That's not why I don't kill now. I don't kill now because there's no point in killing. Not because it hurts the other animal. That's not why I don't kill. I may not have stolen things because I thought to myself, well, if I steal it, then it's going to hurt the other person. when they find that something they love, something they wanted has gone missing, then it's going to make them sad, make them unhappy. That's not why I don't steal anymore. The reason I don't steal anymore is because there's no point in stealing. There's nothing out there that is worth stealing. Because stealing can only bring an object to me, and that object does not have pleasure, so why steal? Are you getting my point here? And the same goes for sexual misconduct. There's not a single person in this world that can bring you pleasure, because physical contact cannot bring you pleasure, not mental pleasure anyway. I'm not talking about physical pleasure, I'm talking about mental pleasure. No sight, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch can bring you pleasure. So why bother going through the trouble of acquiring something that does not bring you pleasure? Because it's always acquiring what you desire. If there's nothing you desire, then what is there to acquire? So therefore, you are free of evil conduct, evil physical conduct, free from unwholesome deeds. And then the same goes for speech. You may have lied to acquire what you desired. You may have lied to take away something that didn't belong to you. You may have lied. Then perhaps all of you. There will have been instances in your life where you have lied. There may be some of you who think, actually, you know what, Swaminas, I've never done any of these bad things in my life. I've always been good character. True, it may be the case. But here's the thing. The reason you didn't lie, the reason you didn't steal is because the opportunity never presented itself to you. That's why. Because you were always well-to-do. Because you always had the resources you needed. Because your parents were always around. Whenever you needed something, they gave it to you. The opportunity never arose. You know, some people say, Swaminas, I never get angry. That's because you live in a civil society where you have the opportunity to be angry has simply not presented itself to you as yet. What if someone comes to stab your mother? Would you not get angry? I have never hit anybody. Why? Because the opportunity hasn't presented itself to you yet. I have never stolen anything. Yeah, maybe, because you're hungry, your family has never gone hungry yet. The poor man on the street today, before he was a poor man, he didn't want to steal, but today he does that because that's how he makes his living. So just because you don't do unwholesome deeds as a result of the opportunity for that, or the circumstances have not presented itself to you, doesn't mean you don't want to do them. It's just you've not had to do them yet. The day you become a Sotapanna, the day you begin to realize that this world is anicca dukkha anatta, now you don't do them, not because the opportunity hasn't presented itself to you, because you just don't have a need to do it. Full stop. Did you have a question, madam? White lies. What about white lies? That's a very good question. So, there are two words when it comes to false speech. There's one musavad and there's anikavad. Okay? So we've learned about false speech and how false speech is bad and is wrong, right? So I'm not going to say that white lies are a good thing, because I cannot condone that. However, when the Buddha speaks of false speech and falsehood, he's talking about musavada. That's why when you observe the precept, you say, musavada veramani sikkhapadan samadhiyami. Not anikavada veramani sikkhapadan samadhiyami. So white lies are generally where you say something that is not true. I mean, that is what a lie is, in a sense. But musavada is something much more grievous than that. It carries a lot more weight. A musavada is where what you say is against the truth of the world. Satyavada. This is what the Buddha comes into this world to preach. He spoke of the Four Noble Truths. That is the Satya. Four Noble Truths. So he spoke of the noble truth of suffering. He spoke of the noble truth of the cause of suffering. Right? Let's just focus on those two things. Forget the third and the fourth for a moment. So he speaks of how pleasure is not to be seen in a good light. Because he says, behind the veil of pleasure, there's ample amounts of pain. So he speaks to his disciples, he speaks to you, and he says, penetrate the veil of pleasure and realize the suffering that lay beneath. And therefore, don't attach yourself to what looks pleasurable on the surface. Superficially, it may look pleasurable, but underneath, there's lots of pain, there's lots of suffering to be had. This is the truth that he brought into the world. That is the Satyavada. So Musavada is the opposite of that. So whenever you speak to someone, and he says, you're on your way to Colombo, someone asks, where are you? I'm saying, I'm going to collect candy. That's an Anikavada. But when you walk up to someone and says, hey, this is a new restaurant in town. Delicious. You didn't realize, did you, that is Musavada? Because when you say that to someone, what are you doing to that person? You are telling them that this world is Nitya Sukha Atta. Pleasurable, joyful and essenceful. Therefore, with every word that you utter, in this man's mind, this person's mind, they're being attached to worldly existence. Be that flowers or a restaurant or whatever the case might be. Now that is what Musavada is. Because it goes completely against the Buddha's teaching of Satyavada, which is the Four Noble Truths. Where the Buddha says, penetrate the veil of pleasure and look at the suffering that lay beneath. What you're doing when you say, hey, new movie, fantastic, you've got to watch it, best watch movie before you die. Right? When you say that to someone, if they accept that, what you're doing is giving them a cause to believe that there's pleasure out there. So any chance that he had of seeing the truth, you're blocking it. Because what you're giving him is entirely against what the Buddha came into this world to teach. So you're distancing that person from nirvana. You're distancing him or her from his salvation, from liberation, from deliverance. That is what Musavada is. Did you have anything to add, sir? Oh God. Tell me about it. Did you all hear that? Advertising. Advertising industry is based on that. The world is pleasurable, is joyful, and therefore you must live happily. And we have stuff, we have things to help you live happily in this world. I must confess, these are things that I used to tell people. I'm ashamed of myself for the things I used to tell people. I used to inspire people to go and achieve these things. Get yourself a big house, get yourself a big car, get yourself a big wife. No, sorry, not the wife. That's all Musavada. See, you need to realize these things. But people don't tell you this stuff. The entire world is built, the foundation of this world is on Musavada. Lies and falsehood. Because if people realize the truth about this world, they won't hang around, not one more moment. Like you are now beginning to realize, existence in itself is suffering. Existence in itself is suffering. You're beginning to realize that. Like a guy who's realized that all these years of smoking that I've been doing, it's dangerous. It's been killing me on the inside. I didn't realize that. No longer does he go and speak to another person and says, would you like to have a fag mate? No longer does he offer it to another person. In fact, if he sees a young child just picking up a cigarette, trying to smoke, what is he going to say? Don't do it. I picked up a bad habit. I'm trying to give up. Don't pick it up. But before he realized that smoking was bad for him, he went around encouraging other people to pick up this habit. But now he realizes it's wrong, it's bad for him, it's detrimental to his health. While he is trying to give up, he or she will stop other people, will prevent other people from picking up this habit. Isn't that how you are now? You've been smoking all your lives. Now you realize that smoking is bad for you. So you don't go up to someone else and say, would you like to take a cigarette? Would you like to have a cigarette? When actually you're trying to give up now. What do I mean by this? This is an analogy, of course, that I'm offering you. you are beginning to realize that that existence in this world is not pleasurable, but sufferable. Not enjoyable, but vexatious, and therefore essenceless. Why so? Because all that the mind can receive from the outside world, and this I'm going to come to the Arya Maitri now. All that the mind can receive from worldly existence is Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankara, Vijnana. And we've been talking about it for some time now, right? Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankara, Vijnana. The characteristics of Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankara, Vijnana are that they're vexatious, sufferable, and essenceless. How so? Because they take seat in a mind which arise and pass away. Right? Because they arise in a mind that arise and pass away. So they take seat, I think would be the best way to say it. They take seat in a mind which arises and passes away and pass away. The Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankara, Vijnana which come into your mind arise and pass away. These are the only 5 things that you can actually take from the outside world. So when you look at something, let's say you're looking at these flowers. What's going on right now? As you're looking at these flowers, the light rays hit your eyes and through to your retina, right? And then from there to your brain, that's just an electric signal, an electric impulse. And then from your brain to your mind, that's where the Rupa, the sense impression is being passed down from your brain to your mind. And then once it's in the mind, Vedana, Sanya, Sankara, Vijnana, which are the other components which help you to define what it is that you've just seen. The fact that you know that you're looking at a flower is not simply to do with the fact that light entered your eye. How do you know it's a flower? That's something you learnt. Right? The light rays didn't bring a flower to you. Before you knew this was a flower, you kept looking at it, but you didn't know what the hell it was. But now you know it's a flower, you know you can smell it. Right? You know that they sway in the wind. Right? All of these things you know now. So that didn't come with the light rays that came from the flower. These are things you learned. You acquired this knowledge. And therefore, when you see this side, Vedana, Sanya, Sankara and Vijnana are the other components that give you the full picture of what you have just seen. They add the detail. That's the embroidery of what you just seen. Okay? But they come and take seat in a mind which arises and passes away. And therefore, if you attach to them, if you don't attach, no problem whatsoever. If you attach to them, when they pass away, what's passing away is something you are attached to. So now think about something you lost that you were attached to. How did that make you feel? Of course, goes without saying, made you suffer, right? Simple example would be a loved one in the family. They passed away, that made you suffer. It made you suffer not because they passed away, it made you suffer because you were attached to them when they passed away. So the Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankara, Vijnana, which the mind is always attached to, constantly keeps arising and passing away in the mind, leaving the mind vexing. So this is how the mind works, no matter what gets put in front of your eyes. Yes or no? This is how the mind works, no matter what gets put in front of your ears. Yes or no? Smell, taste, touch, all of this, the same. It's the same fundamentals. Now think about this for a moment then. I'm looking at you guys right now, and you're looking at me. What is the mind receiving right now? In both our cases? Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankara, Vijnana, and what else? Nothing else. That's all. But the nature of all types of Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankara, Vijnana are that they're vexatious, sufferable, and essenceless. Anicca, Dukkha, Anatta. They are not sources of pleasure. Actually, they're not sources of pain either. But when you attach to them, that's when you have to suffer. Because it would be wrong to say that they're sources of pain or suffering, because then an arahant would have to suffer equally. But that's not true. Okay? So for someone who has no attachment in their mind, there's no pain or suffering to be had from the outside world. But that is not the case with me. I don't know about you. As I'm looking at you, all I'm receiving in my mind are Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankara, Vijnana. And all of these aggregates, the nature of them are that they're vexatious, sufferable, and essenceless. Anicca, Dukkha, Anatta. Not once have you given me anything. Not once have you given me anything that is joyful, pleasurable, and essential. Not once. After 100 sermons I've been preaching to you, not once did you come and give me. How dare you? So ungrateful. Not once have you given me anything that is pleasurable, joyful, and essential. Why is that the case? Because all you can give me is what? Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankara, Vijnana. And nothing else. So all you can give me is Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankara, Vijnana. And they by their very nature are vexatious, sufferable, and essenceless. Anicca, dukkha, anatta. So that being the case, is there anything that I can expect from you that can make me happy? Is there anything I can expect from you that can make me happy? Only the Dhamma. Is there anything you can expect from me that can make you happy? Put the Dhamma to a side for a moment. Put the Dhamma to a side for a moment. Even the Dhamma, if you attach yourself to it, there's still suffering. Okay? So even the Dhamma, because all conditioned things by nature will arise and pass away, and the Dhamma is the same. Did I not talk to you about the empty chair karmasthana? I think I mentioned it in one of the Sinhala sermons. I do this with our young monks at the monastery. Call it the Hisputwe karmasthana. Empty chair. Empty chair because one day we were doing a meditation session, and I think Guru Hamir wasn't there on that particular day. And there was another monk who would come and was giving us karmasthana. So it doesn't matter who does the karmasthana sessions. We're all students here. None of us wants to be a teacher. Everyone's a student. So there was a chair. There was a monk who was sat there giving the karmasthana. And after a while, when we were doing our meditation, he got up and walked away. So now there's an empty chair. So as we all woke up from our meditation session, I observed what happened there, and then I spoke to our monks and I said, something interesting is happening here, and I want you all to observe what just happened there. Did you see that there was a teacher on that chair before, but now he has walked away? So now we are left with an empty chair. Are you following what I'm telling you, the story I'm relating to you? So there was a chair on which there was a monk before. He was giving us karmasthana, meditation instructions, and then he woke up and he left. So as we opened our eyes, the chair was empty. There was no one on the chair. So then I took this moment to explain to our monks, look at that chair now, it's empty, right? What I related to them was, Guru Hamra is not going to be with us forever. Because there was a teacher there first, but now the teacher's gone. So now there's just the empty chair. Are you all ready for the day when Guru Hamra is not going to be around to help you? This is what I was asking our monks. Today you rely on your teacher to be around to help you, to guide you, to instruct you, to show you right from wrong. But do you realize that one day your teacher is not going to be around? Because again, your teacher is also conditioned. Right? So when the conditions cease to exist, the result will cease to exist. Are you ready then? Has the teacher of the Dhamma arisen in your mind? In other words, have you become a Sotapanna by now? This is what I was asking our monks. And then as I was explaining this, someone came and took the chair away. Which was good. Because that helped me to extend the story that I was giving them. So someone took the chair away and then I said, now observe what just happened. Because it's one thing to have the Dhamma and for the teacher to pass away. But one day, the teacher's going to be gone, and then one day, the Dhamma is going to be gone too. Because the chair there we call the Dharmasana, right? This is the Dharmasana. The chair that you have in the main hall, that's a Dharmasana. You sit on that chair only to preach the Dhamma, which represents the Dhamma. So whoever sits on that chair, the sole purpose of them sitting on that chair is to preach the Dhamma. That's why we call it a Dharmasana. Much like this. So first the teacher walked away, and then someone took him and took the chair away. In other words, the teacher's gone. Now the Dhamma is also gone. So now what refuge do you have? Was what I was asking them. So how long does the Buddha's dispensation last? How much longer? 2.5? 2.5? Now you know the answer. It was 2:45 when I first asked you that question. It's 5:45 now. The Buddhist dispensation is going to come to an end in 6 hours and 15 minutes. Are you ready? You got to think about these things. Before we do the Arya Maitreya, as I've mentioned that point, and I know you have to leave in a bit, so I'm gonna give you something else to think about, right? This is something I was instructing our monks earlier on in the week, and I thought I should mention this to you. As I was talking to them about reflecting on death, which is Marananusati, and that's not just simply thinking, right, I'm going to die. It's not about thinking I'm going to die all the time. It's about if I'm going to be dying tonight, then what should I be doing in the next few hours that I have left? It's to become diligent. It's to be earnest in your practice, right? To be heedful. So something I mentioned to our monks earlier on in the week. And it's a thought that occurred to me as I was cleaning the bathroom earlier on in the week. And as I was cleaning the floor, the thought occurred to me, if I'm going to be dead by the end of today, isn't this the last time I'm going to be cleaning this toilet? So as I was cleaning the toilet, the thought occurred to me, if I'm going to be dead by the end of today, isn't this the last time I'm going to be cleaning this toilet? That struck me deeply. Because when I had that realization, I thought to myself, if this is the last time I'm going to be doing this, I'm going to put 100% of myself into it. Because this is the last time I'm able to clean a toilet that belongs to the Mahasangha. So now, when you get back home, or after the end of this sermon, if you pour a cup of tea and hand it over to someone, in the hope that they are able to refresh themselves, might that not be the last cup of tea you're giving to someone? When you get back home tonight, if you cook a meal for your family, might that not be the last meal you'll be cooking in this life? Might it not be? Remember, your life ends tonight. If you worship the Buddha before you leave today, might that not be the last time you get to worship him? If you speak to your husband tonight before you say good night, or as you say good night to him, if you bid your children good night before you go to bed, might that not be the last time you'll be speaking to them? If you really begin to reflect on this, you will start to put 100% of yourself into everything you do. Because if something's worth doing, it's worth doing it well. It's worth giving 100% of yourself. Otherwise, it's not worth doing in the first place. If it's worth doing, put 100% of yourself into it, because it's probably the last time you're going to be doing it. Now, if you offer alms to the Mahasangha, if you speak to someone to help make their mind up, someone's crying, someone's weeping, someone's having a problem, you're talking to them, that might be the last time you get, the last opportunity you get to fix someone up. If you're talking to your daughter, if you're talking to your son tonight, wishing them good night, that may be the last time you get to talk to them. Maybe, rather than saying good night, it's better to say Theruvan Saranai. Because these may be the last words you get to talk to them. Because there's no such thing as a good night. when every man, woman and child in this world is vexing, when can they have a good night? When can any man have a good night or a good morning or a good evening? Where are good afternoons? Show me a good afternoon. When has anyone had a good afternoon? That's why whenever you see our monks, what do they say? Theruvan Saranai. Because we remind you, there's only one refuge there is for all sentient beings, and that is the refuge of the Triple Gem. Think about this, right? The reason whenever you see me or any other monks or any other Anagarikas at this monastery, the reason we tell you Theruvan Saranai may be that I am the last person you get to talk to. It may be that is the last conversation you're going to be having. So if those are the last two words you get to hear, I want you to hear the words Theruvan Saranai. Not, hey, how you doing? Not, have a nice day. Not, adios amigos. Now do you see why we say Theruvan Saranai all the time? What if they are the last words you get to hear from another human being? I say Theruvan Saranai, you look the other way and fall dead. Can that not happen? So would you rather me say adios amigos or Theruvan Saranai? Remember, the last thought moment that you have, that is what's going to see you into your next birth. So would you rather not hear me say Theruvan Saranai? May the Noble Triple Gem bless you. May the Noble Triple Gem be with you. Would you not rather hear me say that? This is why we always, whenever you see us, when we walk past by us, we'll always say Theruvan Saranai. Because we fear that this may be the last two words that you get to hear from another human being. And we want those two words to be words that can see you well. If at least you're someone who has done so many misdeeds, so many evil deeds, so many unwholesome deeds, that you're on the path to the hells, at least if Theruvan Saranai are the two words that keep ringing in your ears as you fall dead, it may see you through just one more chance. It may bring you back into the human world, just one more chance. It may take you into the Devaverse, just one more chance. That's why we always say Theruvan Saranai. Now what should you be saying to each other then? Make it a habit. When you bid your children farewell before they leave for school, parents, say, Theruvan Saranai Putta. Theruvan Saranai Dula. When your husband's about to leave for work, Theruvan Saranai. When you have to drop your wife off at work, Theruvan Saranai. Kiss her on the cheek if you want. That's okay. I'm not saying don't. Do whatever you normally do. Give her a peck on the forehead. That's fine. And then say, Theruvan Saranai. Because as she gets off the car and shuts the door and walks 2 steps ahead, a car might just drive over her. At least if the last 2 words she heard was Theruvan Saranai, that may just see her through one more chance. See, we don't do things just because. We do things with meaning. Because there's purpose. So that was a side point. Any meritorious deed you do from today onwards, I want you to think that this is the last chance you get to do it. This is the last chance you get to do it. If you're worshipping a monk, this may be the last time you get to worship a monk. If you're giving someone a cup of tea, this may be the last time you get to do that. If you give someone a pat on the back, well done. That may be the last time you get to do it. So put 100% of yourself into it. Not 50, not 80, not 90. Put 100%. If you say thank you to somebody, that may be the last time you get to say thank you. So how should you say it? 100%. Mean every word of it. If you say sorry to somebody, that may be the last time you get to apologize. Say it 100%. With full emotion. Mean it. Mean it when you say it. I'm sorry. because it may be the last time you get to do it. Any meritorious deed you do, anything, absolutely anything. Absolutely anything. You know, it may be that you see an ant being washed away in the water. Do you do that at homes? No, you should. You see an ant being washed away in the water, pick it up and put it to a side so it doesn't drown in the water. Do it. How do you do it? Put 100% into it. Why? That may be the last life you get to save in this life. Put 100%. So when you do it that way, you will be amazed by how much merit you will acquire. Because you know you're putting 100% of yourself into it. You'll be amazed. See, all practical advice I've been sharing with you today. Go home, open up your wardrobes. Take out all the stuff you haven't used in the last year, last 6 months. You know you're not going to be using them anyway. If you did, you would have used them by now. They're just gathering dust. It's the termites that are wearing them now. And take it out, dust them all out, clean them up. If you have to, take it to the dry cleaners. So what? You know, if you're doing it, do it 100%. Would you give something dirty to a loved one? No. So what if that's the last gift you can ever give to somebody? You know, just imagine that. Let's say you've been diagnosed with some kind of terminal illness and your doctor says you only have an hour to live. A beggar comes and knocks on your door. What are you going to say? Go away, you idiot. Is that what you're going to say? No, you only have an hour left. What would you do? You would give everything you have, wouldn't you? And Amahata, come in. What do you want? Have you eaten? Sit down, let's eat. Here, take all the food you want. What about all these rags? Right? Here's some clothes. Take them away. Take them. Why? It's the last hour you have left. And a godly messenger just walked into your house. What a fantastic opportunity to acquire merit. Now the same thing I ask you to do. Go to them. When you give someone a meal, hand them a meal, a lunch packet, give it. How? Put 100% into it. Put 100% into it, folks. Do as I say, and you will reap tremendous rewards you can't even imagine. If you don't get to attain nirvana in this birth, I can guarantee to you, if you do the things that I tell you to do, you will be well. You will avoid the 4 hells. If you do the things I ask you to do. I know this because my teacher tells me to do these things. And he knows it because his teacher advised him. And he knew it because his teacher advised him. And he knew it because the greatest teacher of all advised him. Back to Arya Maitri before we conclude. So as we know, the only things we can give each other are Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankara Vijnana and nothing else. And the nature of all Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankara Vijnana are they vexatious, sufferable and essenceless. So if these are the only things that we can give each other, these are the only things we can exchange with each other, there's nothing that you can give me that's going to bring me pleasure. And the only reason that I suffer is because of my own attachment, not because you bring me pain, you bring me suffering. There's no such thing. I make my own suffering. I am the architect of my own suffering. So that being the case, your existence doesn't do me any favors. Again, put Dhamma to a side. And we're not talking about the physical, you bring me dana, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the mental suffering here, okay? Your existence doesn't bring me any benefits. And your existence doesn't put me doesn't bring me any disadvantages either. So no advantages or disadvantages to me by your existence. My existence does not bring you any advantages or disadvantages. There are no pros or cons to your existence from mine, and there are none the other way around either. So really your existence has no effect on me, and my existence does not have any effect on you, because ultimately the only things we can exchange are Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankara Vijnana. And the moment they come to me, I begin to suffer. So that being the case then, My existence is not a problem to you, but actually my existence is a problem to me. Why? Because my existence is centered around the taking in of Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankhara Vijnana from the world through my five senses, and then attaching myself to them, and then suffering as a result of that. This is what I call existence. This is what existence is. Taking in all the inputs from the outside world, attaching to it, and then suffering. That is existence, summed up. So my existence is not a good thing for me. It's detrimental to my happiness. Your existence is detrimental to your happiness. But we don't have any effect on each other. So therefore, when I reflect on Arya Maitreya, noble metta, my wish, when I say, may I and all beings in all worlds, when I say, may I be free of suffering, I want my existence. And what do I define by existence? The taking in of Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankhara Vijnana, attaching myself to it and suffering as a result of it. This is what my existence is. I want that to stop. I want that to cease. Not the taking in of the Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankhara Vijnana, but the attachment that I have in my mind, so that I am free of suffering. So as much as I want that for myself, I wish that upon you. May your existence come to an end, because your existence is detrimental to your happiness, nothing to do with me. That's got nothing to do with me. My existence has got nothing to do with you, but it's simply detrimental to my happiness. So as much as I want my existence to come to an end, I want your existence. I hope that your existence comes to an end for your own good. Nothing to do with me. Again, this is giving without any expectation in return. Why? Because whether you exist or not has nothing to do with me. If you exist, so remember what I mean by existence here. I like the Sinhala word for it, which is pavatma, which conveys a deeper meaning other than simply, it conveys a meaning more than simply existence. Because pavatma is pahe vata. Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankhara Vijnana, and the vata, which is the ritual or the routine of the five, Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankhara Vijnana. Pahe vata pavatma. So this ritual that we are engaged in is taking in Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankhara Vijnana, attaching to it and suffering as a result of that. So the best word the closest translation I can find that is existence, which is not simply about being alive, but it's more, what I mean by that is more than that, which is the process of taking in five through your five senses, the Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankhara Vijnana, attaching to it, and then suffering as a result of that. So my existence or my indulgence in the five aggregates or clinging aggregates. So clinging on to the five aggregates, I suppose, is another way of putting it. Upadana skandha. Clinging on to the five aggregates, which is what I mean by existence, is detrimental to my happiness. So may that come to a stop as soon as possible. And the same goes for you. And may that come to a stop as soon as possible for you. So even when an Arahat does the Arya Maitreya, the way that he would do it would be simply to leave out the may I, and he'll say, may all beings in all worlds be free of suffering. Because remember, an Arahant is someone who is free of all mental attachments. But still, he has a physical suffering that he has to endure. So if an Arahat were to say, may I and all beings be free of all suffering, and that is acceptable. But when he says, may I be free of all suffering, what he means is, may I be able to attain parinibbana. As in passing away. Why? For as long as he's alive, the physical suffering still continues. But when he says, may all other beings in all worlds, what he then means there is the mental attachments and the mental suffering. So two different things meant there. Any Arahants in the room? Okay. Right. So that being the case then, when we cultivate noble metta, what I want you to reflect on, so this is the essence of this, what I want you to reflect on is my existence, which is the clinging on to the five aggregates, simply leaves me suffering time and time and time again, and that has nothing to do with you. My suffering is my own making. Your suffering is your own making. We have nothing to give each other except for Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankara Vijnana. And the moment you give them to me, I use it, I misuse it. Right? Because I have not been trained yet to use it properly. I'm still in training. And what I can offer you is Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankara Vijnana, and you're still abusing them. You're misusing them. Why? How come you're misusing them? Attaching yourself to them. Because you believe them to be pleasurable, joyful and essence-full. And therefore you attach yourself to them. And what happens as a result of that? Suffering. So you misuse them. I misuse them. So best not you give them to me. So really you have nothing to give me that's going to make me happy. The only things you give me, I misuse them. And what happens? I suffer as a result. The only things that I can offer you, you take from me and you misuse them and you begin to suffer. Would you give a kid a knife to play with? Why not? Because knives are bad things? No, why not? Because a kid doesn't know how to use a knife. That's why you don't give a kid a knife. But when the kid grows up, now you can give him all the knives in the house. No problem. Because now he knows how to use them. The problem is, until you become an arahant, you don't know how to use Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankara Vijnana. Therefore you misuse them. How do you misuse them? By attaching yourself to them. And the moment you attach, you begin to suffer. So you have nothing that is worthy to give me, to offer me, and I have nothing that is worthy to offer you. And if living is simply our exchange of these 5 things with each other, then really, I don't want that. So this is why I want me making my own suffering to cease. And I want you to cease the suffering that you make for yourselves. And that's when I say, may I and all beings in all worlds be free of suffering. And when you say, may I and all beings in all worlds be free of suffering, then what you're really talking about is, my existence is my own problem, your existence is your own problem, may we both fix our own problems. I'm not here to treat you, you're not here to treat me, let's look after ourselves. I think I've shared this story with you before. 2 people met each other. One guy says to the other, hey, how about you look after me and I'll look after you? What did the other guy say? That's right. I will look after myself for you and you look after yourself for me. That's a very profound statement. I will look after myself for you. You look after yourself for me. Because when I look after myself, what do I mean by looking after myself? Freeing my mind of the defilements. When I'm someone who's free of desire, aversion and delusion, of all defilements, do you have any reason to fear me? No, you have no reason to fear me. You have no reason to worry being around me. Because I'm free of desire, aversion and delusion. Well, not yet, but one day. So until then, you should fear. You should fear me. You should worry about being around me. Because I still have limits. Above that limit, I don't know what I'll do. Right? So it's good to have patience. Be proud of the fact that you can be patient. Be ashamed of the fact that you have to be patient. Did you understand that? Let me repeat. Be proud about the fact that you can be patient. Be ashamed of the fact that you have to be patient. How patient is the Buddha? Infinite. Because he doesn't need to be patient. He doesn't need to be patient. What is to be patient? Something that you don't like is going on and you are patient. I'm not going to fight back. I'm going to restrain myself. Keep pushing the wrong buttons and I'm not going to fight back. I'm not. I'm going to be stronger than this. I'm not going to fight back. The Buddha never says that. The Buddha never even thinks of it like that. Because there's nothing in this world that can disrupt him. So for an arahant, for a Buddha, being patient it just comes as, that's just natural. It's natural. Like breathing, it's just natural. Whereas for you and I, we have to practice patience. We practice patience and we keep practicing it until it becomes infinite. And when you reach that level, then you no longer have to be patient. You no longer have to be patient. This is why I say, be proud about how patient you can be today, and that's a good thing. Be proud about the fact that you can be patient, but be ashamed of the fact that you have to be patient. Did you understand? Okay. So whoever you spread the kindness of Arya Maitreya, so they call it loving kindness. So whoever you spread this on, or spread this upon, be that your parents or your friends or family, whoever, it doesn't matter who, all beings in all worlds, right? What I want you to think about is, my existence is detrimental to my own happiness. Your existence is detrimental to your own happiness. So therefore, may my existence come to an end. And again, by existence, remember, what we don't mean is death. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about here is the clinging on to the aggregates. Attachment to Rupa, attachment to Vedana, attachment to Sanya, attachment to Sankhara, and attachment to Vijnana. Because the moment attachment ceases, then that is the cause of all suffering. Then you are free from all suffering. And as much as I want this to happen for myself, I want this to happen for all other beings in all the worlds. Because how much happier would that make me? How much happier would that make me? None. Because it's got nothing to do with me. Whether you suffer or not has got nothing to do with me. Whether I suffer or not has got nothing to do with you. We're individual in that aspect. Okay? So we'll do that for a few minutes and then we'll conclude the session today. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Of Nibbana, healed with the ultimate bliss of Nibbana, healed with the ultimate bliss of Nibbana. May I and all beings in all worlds be healed with the ultimate bliss of Nibbana. Healed with the ultimate bliss of Nibbana. Healed with the ultimate bliss of Nibbana. May I and all beings in all worlds be healed with the ultimate bliss of Nibbana. Healed with the ultimate bliss of Nibbana. Healed with the ultimate bliss of Nibbana. Okay. Have you all been doing your 15 minutes every day? Why are you looking away when I ask a question? Is that the look of guilt? You've got to do it. Don't be just someone who talks the talk, walk the walk. You got to walk the walk. You got 100 leagues to go. How much talking is going to get you there? You got to start walking. Remember, your outpatient department patients, So don't forget that. I can only give you the prescription. You have to take the drugs. You have to take the medicine, and I'm not here to see if you're taking your drugs at the right time, on the right day, if you're taking the right dosage. I can't check all of that because you are not here. So when I prescribe, you have to take it. Because you and you alone are responsible for your salvation. The teacher can only show the path. You have to walk it. So make sure you put time aside for that. And also last week I reminded parents about the duties they have towards their children. At least once a week or at least once a fortnight, if you can't find the time once a week, sit down with them. You should have set them goals by now. Get them to chant the Arya Maitreya once a day before going to bed. It's easy to do, right? So why don't people do it? Absolutely. Easy not to do. 15 minutes is easy to do. So, it's easy not to do. Remember, I can only inspire you if inspiration is not going to do the trick. One day, desperation will sink in, and then you will want to do it, but then you won't be able to do it. You've all been very good today. I think I've hardly seen anyone start dozing off. But there are, Guru Hamra always says, like in the sessions he does and in the Dhamma hall, sometimes a lot of people, they come and fall asleep. It's as if they're coming here to fall asleep. The fact that they're coming here is great because they want to do it, but the problem is now their bodies can't cope with the mind wants to do. The mind wants to do it, but the body can't cope with it. So the same goes for my dad now. He wants to do things, but now his body can't cope. You have to do it while your body can still cope with what your mind wants to do, because someday it's going to be the mind will want, but the body can't cope. Then you can't fight the falling asleep. Your drowsiness, you won't be able to fight it then. Let alone fighting sleep, you won't be able to stand up on your own 2 feet. Then, that's why I say, do it while you can, folks. Do it while the sun's still out. Learn a lesson from the ants. They gather while the sun's still out. Because when the rain comes, who can say how long the rains will last? So learn from the ants. They gather while the sun's still out. This is what I want you to do also. Do it while you can. There's going to be a day when you can't. When you go deaf, you don't have to come back here. It's okay. You can stay home then. No, seriously, you don't have to come back here once you've gone deaf. I can't help you then. So, you must do it. I still haven't asked you to put your hand up if you've been doing your 15 minutes, because I don't want to embarrass you in front of everybody else. One of these days I'm going to ask you. Like Guru Hamra did yesterday. I loved what he did yesterday. Do you remember? He got you all to shut your eyes, and then he said, put your hands up. Is it not shameful that he had to do it that way? Why did he have to do that? Because people will most likely not be honest. Why? There's a big fat ego. That's why. You don't want to look little in front of someone else. You don't want to look small in front of somebody else. It's shameful that he had to do that. But otherwise, if he had genuinely asked people to put their hands up, most likely you wouldn't have gotten a true response. So I don't want to put you in that situation. I don't believe any of you are like that. I can almost read your mind. You're going, you don't really know us that well, do you, Swami Nonsa? 100 sermons and you still haven't figured us out. No, but please do it. Please. For your own good, please do it. See, I have to say please now. I have to beg you to do it. I have to beg you to save yourselves. I do it 8 hours a day at minimum. On a good day, I get 12 hours of meditation time. And I'm still not an arahant. Do you see the point I'm trying to make? It's almost been 2 years. On a good day, I get 12 hours of meditation time, and I'm still not an arahant, and I have Guru Hamdru next to me. And I'm asking you to do 15 minutes. And you come here once a week. At best. So, how can you save yourselves? You know by now, right? All the other things you do are simply a means to an end. Earning all the money, building houses, getting jobs, having kids, getting married, all of these things are simply a means to an end. The day you go, you're going to say bye-bye to all of them. Only whatever time you have put aside towards your own salvation will see you through. So do it. Look after yourselves. You do a great job at looking after the other person. I'm saying look after yourself for them. That's not to say don't look after them. Look after them too, but look after yourself for them. You know, think about this. This is the last thing I'll say and I'll close the session. Today you live with your family. Okay? And it's, and I believe that you're good parents. You try to get your children to do good things, good deeds. It may be that at your household, you get your children to come and, maybe serve your lunch for you. If you don't do it, I have to ask you why not. Get your child to serve your lunch for you. That's the least you can do, not for yourself, for them. How much merit can they acquire by doing that? Don't take away these opportunities. The Buddha said, treat your parents like you would treat an arahant. Get your children to do these things. Teach them the value of parents. Anyway, so the point I was trying to make was, today you're simply their mother. Today you're simply their father. And maybe if you're still a worldly being or a pruthakjana, then they will still acquire merit by offering you a cup of tea, bringing you lunch, serving you dinner, polishing your shoes, giving you a massage, whatever. But what if you become a Sotapanna? Now, it's still the same action. But the merit that your children acquire as a result of doing exactly the same thing has just increased by 1,000,000-fold. Now what happens if you become a Sakrudagami? What if you become an Anagami? Your children don't have to do anything else to acquire merit. They can simply be at home, attending to you. Today they acquire merit only because you're their biological mother, you're their biological father. But on top of that, if you can become a noble person, now how much merit can they acquire? Because now they are tending to a noble person. Your children can acquire all the merit. They don't have to go anywhere else after that. They can simply be at home and acquire all the merit that they need to get to Nibbana. See, this is why I say, look after yourself for them. When you become a Sotapanna, the power of that, the benefit of that, the advantage of that is not simply to yourself, but to everyone who's around you. Everyone. And if you become a Sotapanna, perhaps your children can't make it here. Now when you talk to them the Dhamma, they can become a Sotapanna as a result. You don't have to say a lot. But if you're not a Sotapanna, you can't do that for them. Now even at the workplace, right? There may be an attendant who brings a cup of tea. But now if you are a Sotapanna, who are they offering this tea to? A noble person. Initially it was just a colleague. And they were doing it because it was their duty. But now they're making the same offering, but to a Sotapanna person. See, look after yourself for the other person. This is how the Buddhist philosophy works. This is the truth of the world. So look after yourself. And to look after yourself, you have to do the things that I say. And I'm only saying these things because I do them. I will not say anything that I don't do myself. I promise you that I will not tell you to do one single thing that I don't do myself. Because that would be hypocrisy. I don't want to be a hypocrite. I will only say things that I do myself. So do them. So now we are going to be transferring merits. And how much should you put into it? Why is that? This may be the last time you're transferring merits. Can that not be the case? Of course. Let us take a moment to transfer the merits that we have all acquired today. First and foremost, let us remind ourselves once again that it is because of the Supremely Enlightened One, the Perfect One, the Omniscient One, the Infinitely Compassionate One who dedicated Himself to relieving ourselves, to redeeming all of us from this infinitely long journey in samsara, from the suffering and the shackles of samsara, that we have the gift of Dhamma today. It is because through tremendous effort and exercise that He was able to discover the Dhamma and pass it on to us and teach us and be our master. Let us also take a moment to remind ourselves of the Bhikkhu, Bhikkhunis, Upasaka, Upasikas who since time immemorial by-hearted this teaching and passed it down to us from generation through to generation in the form of the Tripitaka, which we have today at our perusal so that we can study, understand it and comprehend the Dhamma. Let us also take a moment to transfer the merits that we have all acquired today to all members of the Mahasangha, wherever they may be resident today, including the Mahanayakas, the Anunayakas of all the chapters of all the Nikayas throughout the world, as well as all of the other monks, no matter where they may be. They are all men and women who have donned robes in the hope of achieving the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Let us take a moment on this occasion to remind ourselves that although you have come here to this monastery to make offerings, to listen to the Dhamma, let us not forget for a moment of the venerable monks and the nuns who are resident in your local temples and nunneries, who despite having dedicated their lives to practicing the path, have today given up some of that time towards your salvation and to attend to your day-to-day needs, including the Ahampasa for your children, as well as attend to you in times of rain and in times of storms, and helping you to become better people, to help you become happier peoples altogether. So may they all be able to rejoice in the merits that we have all acquired today. Let us take a moment to transfer merits also to all the members who are members of the Sangha resident at this monastery, from Guru Swamin Wahanse down to all the Samaneras who are resident at the monastery, as well as all the Anagarikas who have taken tremendous effort to make this event a success today by organizing the premises and by making the facilities available to all of us. May they all be able to rejoice in the merits that we have all acquired today. May through the power of these merits, if any of them have today been born in the woeful planes, be able to redeem themselves and be born in the blissful planes. May through the power of these merits they abstain from the unwholesome deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and may they all attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let us also take a moment to transfer merits to the Devas, Brahmas, spirits, demons and the dead, all our ancestors and everyone who will have predeceased us, mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, uncles, aunts, nephews, nieces, grandparents, teachers, colleagues, co-workers and so on and so forth. Anyone and everyone who might have helped us, assisted us and supported us in any way, shape or form to become better people, to become better citizens of this country and have shaped our lives for the better, may they all be able to rejoice in the merits that we have all acquired today. Let us also take a moment to transfer merits to all the men and women who might have lost their lives in the 30-year-old long war that we have had in Sri Lanka, as well as all the members of the armed forces and the police force who dedicated themselves and sacrificed themselves to leave us a country in which today we live in peace and harmony. Let us also take a moment to transfer merits to any men and women and children who might have lost their lives in natural calamities such as the tsunamis and earthquakes, not just in Sri Lanka but also in other parts of the world, bearing in mind for a moment that they will all have been a mother to us, or they will all have been a father to us at some point in this infinitely long journey in samsara. May they all be able to rejoice in the merits that we have all acquired today, and may through the power of these merits they abstain from the unwholesome deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and may they all be able to attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let us also take a moment to transfer merits to all the members of your family who are among the living today, as well as anyone who might have taken on your duties and responsibilities on their shoulder and therefore have relieved you of such duties and responsibilities so that you can be here today to listen to the teaching, to practice the teaching and therefore redeem yourselves from the shackles of samsara. It is because they have made that sacrifice that you are able today to reap the rewards of those actions. May they all be able to rejoice in the merits that we have all acquired today. Let us also take a moment on this special occasion where we celebrate the 100th event of these sermons, to pass on the merits that we have all acquired today to everyone every man, woman, and child who will help make this event a success from its very beginnings all the way up to today, having sacrificed themselves, having dedicated themselves to this cause, having set aside time, effort, money in whatever capacity they were able to. If the least that they did was pass on their blessings to make this event a success, make this program a success, then may they all be able to rejoice in the merits that we have all acquired today, particularly reminding ourselves about all the men and women who are spread about the world, who have made it their duty to expounding the Dhamma, passing it on to other people, passing it on to their friends, and getting this Dhamma out to the masses, in transcribing these sermons, in making the videos, audios, and making it available for mass consumption in every way, shape, or form. May they all be able to rejoice in the merits that we have all acquired today. Let us take a moment to also transfer merits to the members of the Mahasangha who are resident at the Sri Yalanmathani which was at one point our venue for hosting these sermons. May they all be able to rejoice in the merits that we have all acquired today, as well as anyone and everyone who might have helped throughout this journey to make this event a success, by providing with transport, providing these facilities, in making donations in whatever capacity they were able to, or at the very least putting their hands together and passing on their blessings in the hope that this event could become a success, not just for their own salvation, but for that of all universal beings. May they all be able to rejoice in the merits that we have all acquired today, and may through the power of all the merits that we have all acquired today, throughout these sermons from the very beginning up until this point, may they all be able to rejoice in these merits. If any of those men and women are today no longer among the living, may they be able to rejoice in the merits that we have all acquired today. If any of them have been born in the woeful plains, may through the power of these merits they be able to redeem themselves and be born in the blissful plains, and may through the power of these merits they abstain from the unwholesome deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and be able to attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana in the era of the Gautama Supreme Buddha itself. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And finally, may through the course of all the merits that we have all acquired today, may these merits empower and energize all the men and women spread around the world, just like yourselves, who are striving day and night to practice the path, who are striving day and night to fight the pangs of desire, aversion, and delusion, and to attain the bliss of Nibbana. May they be energized, may they be empowered, and through them may be able to witness the advent of many hundreds of thousands of Arahatun Mahanses and Arahat Mehenin Mahanses in this blessed land, in our very lives itself. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And finally, may you and I and everyone who will have contributed to the success of these events, to these programs, right from the very beginning up until this point, and from this point on to the future, to whatever point in the future, may they all be able to rejoice in the merits that we have all acquired today, and may through the power of all these merits, we all be able to become an Arahatun Mahanse. May we all be able to become an Arahat Mehenin Mahanse in these very lives itself and the era of the Gautama Supreme Buddha itself. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Members of the Mahasangha will now transfer their blessings to you. I know that this is the last time I'm transferring my blessings to you. Hopefully you know that too. May I and all beings in all worlds be freed from the fires of desire. May I and all beings in all worlds be freed from the fires of aversion. May I and all beings in all worlds be freed from the fires of delusion. May I and all beings attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. May the Noble Triple Gem be with you all forever. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.